Hey folks, Nathan P. Butler here, and this is our continuing look at Final Girl. These content overviews where we go in depth with all the different components and bits and pieces of any new releases from Final Girl. So in this video, we're looking just at Series 3. There was some stuff related to Series 3 or between Series 2 and 3 that we looked at in a previous recent video that would include, say, the Series 2 gruesome death books in physical form that were part of this Kickstarter, but which, because they are related to Season 2 or Series 2, we looked at in that previous video. We're going to focus entirely here on Series 3. And you'll notice we have the Series 3 Ultimate Box here, and we've got the Mystery Box. We're going to hold the Mystery Box content, and we are going to hold the content of any of those secret envelopes, as they're called, secret envelopes. We're going to hold those until the end for a spoiler section, as we've done in the past with these videos. So no worries about having the secret envelope content or the content of the mystery box spoiled early on in the video. Those will not be addressed until there is a clear spoiler warning near the end. I would note, by the way, as we're doing this, I do have some playmats underneath just for background. Those are the Series 2 playmats. There are no new large playmats for Series 3, although we will see a little supplemental playmat that is not on the table right now. So let's talk about what you could have gotten through the Series 3 Kickstarter. You could have gotten any individual film or core box for $20. You could have picked up just the 5 feature films along with the standard stretch goals, we'll talk about what that means in a moment, for $99. The 5 films and the miniatures for $139 along with your premium stretch goals. The Ultimate Box here, which included all the stretch goals and all, that was $179. That also, by the way, was the price if you wanted to get the Series 1 or Series 2 Ultimate Box, which was available as an add-on. Note, by the way, that for any of the alternate boxes, the mystery box is not included. I should also note that the alternate killer miniatures, if they exist, are not part of that box. So if you picked up Series 1, which has some alternate Series 1 killer miniatures, the alternate ones are not included. Same for Series 2. Those are because the alternate killer miniatures are created in the US. They're not part of the fulfillment from stuff that is produced overseas, so always a separate purchase. The regular miniatures, though, are in there. Now, you could have picked up all 3 Ultimate Boxes and all 3 Mystery Boxes in one giant batch for $549, which is essentially, if I calculated right, a $28 discount. You can pick up the Series 2 physical gruesome death books by themselves because they had just been a stretch goal digitally previously for $20, cut from $25 originally. You can get the mystery boxes for Series 1 and 2 for $10 each. The Series 3 mystery box, being bigger, is $20, and the box of props was available for $30. Their funding goal was $300,000. They raised $1,811,386 just in that initial Kickstarter phase. So, since we can't look at the mystery box yet, it is time to delve into the Ultimate Box for Series 3. Now, before we dive into this stuff, full disclosure, I am a playtester now for Final Girl, starting with Series 3, and all of the stuff we're seeing in this video was provided to me by Ryder Games. And while I will not speak to the playtesting process as we're going through here, because that's not really something I can talk in depth about, I will say that it is absolutely amazing to see stuff that I helped playtest for so long in its final form. It's almost surreal. I love it. So here's what it's going to look like when you get it. It has the little sheet here over the shrink wrap. It says Ultimate Box Final Girl Series 3. We have the best solo game winner from the 15th Annual Gaming Awards, Kickstarter Most Funded Solo Game of All Time, Golden Meeple Board Game Revolution from 2021, Quackalope 5 out of 5, Golden Geek 2021, and Man vs. Meeple Top 10 Solo Games. All the little accolades here. One player, 20 to 60 minutes, ages 14 plus. A solo game of survival horror by A.G. Porfirio and Evan Derrick. Additional design by Mike Martins, Julie Aaron, Katya Howitson, and Ryan Jajorian. I apologize if I said any of those incorrectly. And then we have our art credits here, which I'm sure in some cases I will mispronounce also, with art from Tyler Johnson, Roland McDonald, Carrie L. Smith, Agnieszka Dabrowica, and Vincent Dutrait. Notice there is a warning, important. This special Series 3 Ultimate Box does not contain a Final Girl core box pictured here, which is needed to play the game. The core box, if you need it, inside an Ultimate Box, is in the Series 1 Ultimate Box, but can of course be purchased separately, or as part of the starter set with the Happy Trails Horror. Then down in the corner we have Ryder Games. We have our 5 killers from the feature film boxes up top, and then we have all the Final Girls from not just the films, but also the vignette running down there on the bottom, very much like we've seen before. This sheet just has a back section what's inside your Final Girl Series 3 Ultimate Box. And this will help explain what an Ultimate Box is compared to what we've seen before, though I will note that here in just a moment as well briefly. Thank you for purchasing the Final Girl Series 3 Ultimate Box. You are now the proud owner of all of the retail content and promos for Final Girl Series 3. The contents of the interior boxes are packed slightly differently than if you'd purchased them all separately. Most things are pre-packed and organized for your convenience. Just be aware of this, as some contents may not be listed in that specific product's rules/content list. You have a list of all the stuff that it includes, a note, again reminding you that you need a core box, a note about special feature storage for the empty space that we'll look at when we actually open it, feature film boxes, cast crew box, bonus features box, special effects crate. We're going to look at all that stuff. Ryder Games website. We have the Discord QR code, and then up here in the corner, ready for more? And then it shows the Ultimate boxes that are now available for Series 1 and 2. So what is an Ultimate box? Well, in the past, you had different configurations of the boxes that you could get. Initially with Series 1, when it was kickstarting, there was no storage box of any kind. And then in Series 2, they started offering these boxes, and you had a booster box, a franchise box, or a storage box option for Series 1. For Series 2, you had a franchise box or a storage box option for that one. And the franchise boxes were basically the core stuff, like the films and the storage box and all that, but did not include all the incidental stuff, like vehicle miniatures, Killer and Final Girl miniatures, miniatures to go with the vignettes if those existed, that sort of thing. So even if you got the big box, you still had to get the little incidentals that could then be stored inside the big box. And the storage box was really just the cast and crew box, the bonus features box, maybe the box to put mats in and whatnot, and then the storage box to go around it, but really was mostly barren. It was for those who already owned everything else. Well, the Ultimate box takes even that franchise box up a notch and just flat out includes everything except the mystery box in a single thing. Notice it says the retail content and promos. The mystery boxes are Kickstarter exclusive. They are not retail or promo content. They're not meant to be stored inside that box. So it's basically everything. This is like if you had bought all 5 of the feature films, the storage box, all the miniatures and whatnot, and in the other season's cases, the mats, though we'll find that that's not what the special effects crate holds here, and then put them into a single box. It's just much more convenient to get everything this way. The cover here, it is basically just the same artwork with none of the text or anything on it. Looks very clean. This is how it'll look on your shelf if it's facing outward, and this is also similar to the design of what we saw with Series 1 and 2. So let's look at the back of the box or the bottom of the box, depending on how you're orienting it on your shelves. So we have some images here. We have our cast crew box, bonus features box, special effects crate, and the 5 films there. So all the boxes that go inside this box. Final Girl Series 3, even more horror awaits. This massive box contains the special FX crate, guest stars, and the Series 3 collection of feature film boxes for the critically acclaimed solo game Final Girl. Also included inside are the miniatures and bonus content for Series 3, such as the lore and scenario and gruesome death books. So everything's in here. Again, a bunch of awards: Golden Geek 2021, Quackalope 5 out of 5, Kickstarter Most Funded Solo Game of All Time, Golden Meeple 2021 Board Game Revolution, Man vs. Meeple Top Solo Games 10, but then we also have the Dice Tower Seal of Excellence, and Best Solo Game 2021 from Meeple Mountain. Miniatures included. All Series 3 miniatures, killers, girls, minions, and vehicles are included. Ryder Games, same info again. Note, there may be some Series 3 promos or products released along with future series content that are not included, sort of future-proofing there. All the addresses and stuff that you would need. You got your UPC there. Included in this Ultimate box. This box is a storage box that holds all of the products for Series 3 of Final Girl, which are included inside. See below for a list of those products. So we have the 5 feature films, the vignette, cast crew, special effects crate, Series 3 bonus features, Series 3 vehicle miniatures pack, Series 3 miniatures pack, which is Killers and Final Girls, Terror from Destiny miniatures pack, Series 3 gruesome death books, and Series 3 lore and scenario books. So again, everything for Series 3 crammed into one box except the mystery box. Now you notice here when I open it up that this is sort of the configuration you're expected to potentially have. North Pole Nightmare is not included with the box. North Pole Nightmare was that special feature that was part of the Kickstarter, sort of, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But this is a separate thing that you would have gotten. The box itself comes with a purposeful empty slot. So this is where you could put a core box, a box of props, or a special feature, the second of which, Shriek, they have announced for Gen Con 2025. So there isn't a specific thing that goes here, but there's space for one more box intentionally. Then you have your 5 feature film boxes: The Killer from Tomorrow, Hell to Pay, The Falconwood Files, The Merrick Murders, and Don't Make a Sound. The Cast and Crew box, which is where you're going to keep your minis and your vignette. And then the bonus features box. Up top, this is the special FX crate. Notice it doesn't look like a VCR like we saw in the other boxes. This has actually got 3 other boxes inside it with a mixture of things. Some of which were sort of accessories, some of which were stretch goal related. We will see those as we go. Very quickly here, as an aside, the way that North Pole Nightmare worked was that it was announced during the Series 3 Kickstarter, but it would be a separate thing to try to get to people by holiday season. So instead, the way that it worked was that there were certain stretch goals that would lower the price for North Pole Nightmare. But it was available through an early pledge manager, separate and distinct from finalizing the pledges for Series 3 content. So again, a typical feature film box is $20, though this is a special feature with more stuff in it. So at the $900,000 stretch goal, there was a price break down to $10 for backers, a price break down to $5 at $1.6 million as a stretch goal, and if they had hit $2,078,485, it would have dropped down to free for all backers. However, that total was not reached. Again, their final funding was $1,811,386, so about $267,000 short of that goal. Still, $5 for the first special feature, which is basically a feature film with all the miniatures and everything already included inside it. Very much like an ultimate box, just for an individual feature film. But because of how it was separated out, and the fact that it was released earlier, we have already looked at North Pole Nightmare in a separate video. We will not be addressing it anymore in this video. You notice that inside, it does show you everything that goes in here, again with that blank space. The bottom here does not have anything around any of its edges. The lid does. You have the names of the killers, including Terror from Destiny, the vignette, and locations on what is essentially the bottom, if you're looking at it from the front there. You have the Tormentor on one side. You have Mandy, one of the Final Girls, on the other side. And then the top of the box, Final Girl Series 3, a solo game of survival horror by A.J. Porfirio and Evan Derrick, Van Ryder Games. And again, that same information we saw on the front, or at least on the front sheet. Now, we are going to be talking about stretch goals, so I want to kind of address something here early on. These 2 boxes are among the 3 that are in the special FX crate. Okay? Guest stars miniatures. For the most part, what we're going to find is that there were standard and premium stretch goals, and most of the standard ones are found in the guest stars box. That is stuff like extra secret envelopes, character packs, proxy cards, things like that. And then most of the premium stretch goals are miniature related. There are physical gruesome death books for Series 3. Those are a premium stretch goal. They're not included in here, but for the most part, we're going to find all those miniatures in here, with the exception of the miniatures that go with Terror from Destiny. And there was a distinction here. If you got the ultimate box, you got all the premium stretch goals. Because of course you did. These are in the box. If you got the 5 films and the miniatures, the $139 bundle, yes, you also got the premium stretch goals as well. But if you only got the 5 feature films, you only got these standard stretch goals found primarily here. I will try to indicate as we go which are standard and which are premium, but the key thing is premium is basically miniature-based stuff. And in some cases, we will see stretch goals where there is a standard component, like a secret envelope, and a premium component, like a miniature, unlocked at the same time for the same Final Girl in that example. This brings us to our first of the 5 feature films found in Series 3. This is The Killer from Tomorrow. So we have Final Girl, Van Ryder Games, directed by Evan Derrick, director of photography Tyler Johnson, starring The Hunter. So we have Final Girl, The Killer from Tomorrow, starring The Hunter, and featuring Sunny Days Mall. The other side is effectively a horizontal version of the same type of thing here. Van Ryder Games, Final Girl, The Killer from Tomorrow, The Hunter, Sunny Days Mall. As is typical here, the bottom just has the 1 player, 20 to 60 minutes, ages 14 plus, with a little warning about the same thing, UPC and address and legalese type information there, and the top is essentially just blank. Then the reverse side is going to essentially be the same thing. You have your other Final Girl here, but everything else essentially laid out the same. now featuring Sunny Days Mall. We have the back of the packaging when it's in shrink wrap here. Again, I apologize as always for the glare. So it does remind us that this is not a standalone game. You do need the core box. It tells us what's included for the regular version of the box. Ryder Games, all the address stuff. Again, one player, 20 to 60 minutes, 14 plus as the age, UPC, little warning about parts, website info and everything. And then this is the part that we're going to see and focus in on for each of these as we go along. So we start with Shop Till You Drop at Sunny Days Mall. How can you defeat a killer robot from the future? How about two? That's just what is in store for you on this fateful day at the mall. The Hunter, Hunter, is looking for a teenage kid known as the Savior. First, you'll have to deal with the Mark V model, then the Mark X model. Those are Mark V and Mark X. Sunny Days Mall is a state-of-the-art facility with a shop for just about anything you can think of. Plus, it has 2 levels and a food court in the middle of everything. Just be careful not to stand too close to the railing. You wouldn't want to fall. So we're actually going to start by looking at the Hunter side, and if you're looking at what this might be inspired by, it is pretty clearly inspired by Terminator films. But in a sense, it's kind of a twist on somewhat like what we saw in Terminator 2. There is a mall as a battle location. There is a mechanism of throwing characters through walls and whatnot. There is a savior to try to protect, so basically like a John Connor type character. However, whereas in the Terminator franchise, the first Terminator has a T-800, an older model, come back, get defeated, and that's essentially it. But he's coming back to kill the mother. And then in Terminator 2, you have a more advanced version coming back to kill the child, and a reprogrammed version of an older model, but not the exact same one, same model, but not the exact same Terminator, coming back to protect the son, reprogrammed in the future by the Resistance. Here instead, it all kind of gets encapsulated into one, where there's going to be an older model Hunter, the Mark V, that you can defeat and reprogram to fight alongside you as an ally when facing the more advanced Hunter Mark X. And they're all trying to kill the savior, who is the child, in this case the teenager. As someone who very much enjoys the Terminator films, with Terminator 2 being his favorite, this is a favorite of mine, but understand this is probably the single most complex Final Girl feature film that exists at this point. There's a lot going on. For this particular video, to save some space, I will show you the organization here of the sides. You can see the symbol to go with the killer or the location, but then I'm going to get this off the screen to give us some space here. So they do still have those nice inserts. The inserts are divided by killer and location, and the types are a little bit different depending on how deep the wells are for small or large cards. They do fit sleeved cards if you are using 60 micron sleeves, but some of these, like this one, really kind of push that boundary. Then we have the Hunter with some artwork here, and a symbol for the set, which in this case is sort of the crosshairs. You, of course, also have your rule sheet. In this case, it's kind of a little booklet because, boy, there's a lot. And that's just for the Hunter. So here we have the board for the Hunter, and this is going to play out a little bit differently than we're used to. There are spaces for 2 minor dark powers, the Hunter, starting horror of 5, health of 15, which is a lot. Spaces for the finale and the dark power, and then the bloodlust track over here. We have our 4 dark power cards, 3 regular and 1 epic. The 3 regular are titanium-laced biotissue, reinforced endoskeleton, cybernetic agility, and then the epic M134 minigun armament. Now you'll notice here, though, that aside from just the regular stuff, so that, if it's sitting down here and the bloodlust reaches here, it flips and gives the Hunter this ability. There's also text here on the side. We'll look at what that means in a moment. You can see that on all of them. One thing I would note that is very different here, though, is that usually bloodlust increases by 1 every time a victim is killed. But the Hunter is focused entirely on its mission. So instead, the Hunter's bloodlust only goes up once per phase if either the Hunter or the Final Girl or an ally take damage. Hence why the dark power can be revealed so far down, because it's not going to go up as quickly as it usually would. Likewise, the panic rules are a little bit different. There's regular panic rules, that all still works the same. But any victim in the killer space on a turn where the bloodlust increases is going to panic. Then we have some somewhat unusual finale cards here. Notice there's kind of this weird image down here in the corner. So we have 3 regular. We have Relentless Pursuit, Termination Mode, active, and Adaptive AI as the regular ones. And then, once again, we got Epic Finales, but this was the $600,000 stretch goal to get Epic Finales at all, which is Epic Finale Mark X 1000. So what's going on with the weird little symbol? So I'll go ahead and place this down here. And you're going to have some tokens. These 2 tokens here show this other image. So this big dude, that is the Hunter Mark V. These represent the female form of the sort of shape-shifting, presumably based on the artwork, Hunter Mark X or Mark X. Okay, that's a set symbol there. So you're going to place 2 of these at the start of the game, right there on top of that spot. And then you have 5 of these tokens with varying amounts of hearts on them. 1 for 0, 1 for 1, 2 for 2, and 1 for 3. You're going to randomly shuffle these up, and you're going to take 3 of them, and they all have this special symbol on the back, like a gear symbol, and place them on top of those. And when you're playing, the Mark V is the first hunter to be on the board. It starts out in that regular killer space using the red killer meeple or the awesome new little Hunter Mark V killer miniature. The health track over here means nothing to the Mark V. That's all for the Mark X when they finally enter the picture. Instead, when you're going against the Mark V, dealing 2 damage, and it must be within the same phase, but it could be across different cards, dealing 2 damage knocks off one of those cybernetic parts. And it winds up using a panic roll, falling into either that space or an adjacent space. Once you've done that 3 times, obviously there aren't any more left there. Then while these are sitting there out on the map, you can attempt to essentially repair and reprogram the Hunter Mark V to become an ally to you. Basically, when you are in a space with one of these tokens, you can spend 1 time, unseen here, to take the token. And then when you go into the space with the deactivated Mark V that is still sitting there, you can spend 1 time to flip over one of the tokens that you acquired and repair the Mark V, giving it however many health appear on the token. Though, of course, if it's that blank one, it's not repaired yet, you got to try it again. As soon as you do that, the Mark V becomes an ally. You put the hearts up here because that is its health, and now it is going to be working with you. Moreover, notice here on the bottom, Mark V power. You're going to take whatever the dark power card was, and now that 90-degree angle oriented part goes underneath. So it still has an ability related to its cybernetic agility in this case. It's just now it's done in such a way that it can help you. So for an ally, you got these 4 white cubes, and you have these spaces for cubes on the ally card. So during the action phase, or in this case, as a reaction, basically you can take one of these actions for the Hunter Mark V, for your ally. They get to do something. And when you do, you put the cube into the leftmost space. And then during upkeep, it moves to the right. And the next upkeep, it moves to the right again. It's now off the card. Now you can use it again. So it's very much like how action cards can't be used again turn after turn, because they have that 1 turn of sort of dead time where you can't purchase it during the planning phase of the same turn where you used it during the action phase. You have to wait until it sort of reloads for the subsequent turn. It's essentially set up like that here. So there is a pause between them, with the exception of the movement aspect here, which very quickly loops right back off during the upkeep phase. But you can now move, attack, and defend with the Mark V as an ally to you. For what it's worth, though, with allies aren't victims, so you can't have them follow you normally. But they're also not final girls, so they can't have items, they can't have victims following them and stuff like that. When you or an ally are in the same space and one of you is being attacked, you can actually choose which of you is being attacked, you or the ally. And generally, the only time that an ally will be targeted is if the targeting symbol is one of these, which means just whoever is closest regardless. Otherwise, it's going specifically after a victim or specifically after a final girl, and neither of those is the ally. Now, what are these tokens for? These are countdown tokens. So after the Mark V has been defeated and is just kind of like sitting there on the board waiting for you to hopefully repair it and make it into an ally, when you get to the killer phase, you basically ignore the killer action and you don't draw a terror card. Instead, you remove one of those. But you notice there's a little bloodlust symbol on the token. You also increase bloodlust by 1. So remove this on a turn, increase bloodlust by 1. Remove this one, the countdown is over. You are running out of time to fix the Mark V before the Mark X can come after you. As soon as that second token is removed, you're drawing a new setup card to figure out where the Mark X is coming out on the board, and you stick it out on the board, which will either be this included little silver meeple, if you don't have the miniatures, or if you do have the minis, this cool mini. Like a cybernetic arm kind of hanging here, and then this is why I said probably shape-shifting, because it has those sort of arms that turn into blades and whatnot. When they come out, they're the ones with that 15 health. And in order to help you deal with this, quite frankly, because it's a crazy amount of health, you actually have these little tokens here to represent 5 health instead of just putting a crap ton of the wooden hearts on there. That'll then bring us to these 16 terror cards here, one of which actually makes use of some more tokens to round out our 18 total tokens here. That is, deploy countermeasures. Basically, the hunter is just tossing these little tokens out into adjacent spaces. And if you, a victim or an ally, wind up going into them, you get hit for 1. There are 7 of those tokens. As to the others, we have eliminate all obstacles, move or be eliminated, system reboot, which specifically deals with which of the hunters is the active one, impersonation mode, active, analyze, targeting weaknesses. Have you seen this person? Shock and awe, intimidation mode, active, ×2, target acquired. Pretty basic here, increase horror, then target the final girl, move, and attack. But there's 3 of those. And terminate Mark V, which is specifically to help the Mark X actually attack the Mark V itself, which again, typically doesn't happen. And then we have 2 minor dark powers. Titanium Shield just makes them super, super tough. And advanced AI, whenever bloodlust increases because a hunter inflicted damage to you or an ally, increase bloodlust an additional time. So 2 health on that one, but kicking that bloodlust up. And then there's kind of an odd one. Hunter Mark X. You're going to build your regular terror deck of 10 cards between the location and the killer. But then you're going to take the bottom 2 and shuffle them with this card specifically and stick it on the bottom. So it's actually an 11 card terror deck in most cases when playing with the hunter. But the Hunter Mark X, basically, it's what's going to bring him out if you took too freaking long with the Mark V. So if the Mark V is the active killer, it immediately shuts down. Increase bloodlust to the top of the track. And yes, that means if you increase to the top of the track, anything that you pass through, it is increasing. You trigger all of those at that time. So if you're down here at 2, and this sucker comes out, and this is what's bringing the Mark V into play, horror, 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 boom, 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 all hitting you as it increases up the track. Place any remaining cybernetic part tokens in its space. Place its dark power card underneath its ally card. Leave any minor dark powers, as the Mark X will inherit them. If the Mark X is not on the board, discard the remaining countdown tokens, draw a new setup card, and place the Mark X in the killer space. Discard any remaining terror cards and reveal the finale. So if this comes up, it's go time. Big time. I have to say, though, the Hunter, for all its complexity, is really awesome, and once you get a feel for how allies work and the whole process of knocking out the Mark V, repairing the Mark V, and kind of when the Mark X will come out, which is a lot to get your head around, it is one of the most fun killers to play against in Series 3, in my opinion. The new Final Girls typically always come on the killer side of a feature film box, so they're meant to be for the box itself, and certainly can be interchanged with any other combination you might want to play. I've put them a little bit higher up on the screen here, so hopefully there's a little bit less glare on them with the sleeves and all. We have here Tally and Cat. And of course, in the feature film boxes, the secret envelopes come standard. We'll see what's in them during the spoiler section later. And of course, they have their miniatures, which would be in a Series 3 miniatures package with the killers, or in the Ultimate box, already packaged in with everything. So for Tally, 6 health here, and her ultimate, when this card is flipped, like now, immediately take a reaction card into your hand. All reaction cards now cost 1 time less. Remember, a reaction card is something like Guard or Retaliate, though there are other special ones. For each additional victim saved, recover 1 health. And notice also that the bonuses for saving victims for her include Guard and Retaliate as cards she can take. So with Tally here, it's all about defense. And here is her miniature here, throwing a grenade. As for Cat, she has 4 health, but she needs 6 to unlock. She does have a Guard here, but not nearly as defensive-oriented as Tally. Her ultimate, whenever you inflict damage to an enemy with a gun, do an additional 2 damage. Nice. And then for her, we will find that one of the weapons for this location, Sunny Days Mall, is the boomstick, and you could dual wield a boomstick. So here we have 2 boomsticks in her hand. The location is, as mentioned, Sunny Days Mall. Its symbol there, as is no surprise, is a sun. Again, you have your rules booklet, though I would say that some of this is actually carried over from the Hunter, because allies play a role in both, so it lays out the allies on both just in case you're mixing and matching your locations and killers. This here is your new map, Sunny Days Mall, with 3 spaces for items, as is basically the norm, a place for your setup card, again, the norm, and then there is your map here. Note you basically have 2 primary entrances and exits, the service entrance over here, and then this one down here in the lower right. So there's some interesting aspects here. So in essence, what you got is sort of a ground floor here. It's this, the atrium, and the food court that's actually made up of 2 adjacent spaces here. And then this is essentially an escalator that's going to let you go up to the upper floor where you have all these different stores and the halls here on the upper level. There's also another escalator over here to get you from the ground floor up to that upper level, though the space doesn't have a name. You can choose, following the little white unidirectional arrow here, you can't go both directions, just one direction, you can choose to jump over the railing, that's what that symbol is, into the food court on the lower level if you want to. But if you do, you have to roll a die, and on a 5 or a 6, which has the success symbols, you're fine. But on a 1 through a 4, you lose 1 health from doing so. The killer will never purposely jump down. They're more deliberate than that. They'll just walk their way around to get to where they're going. A victim could theoretically panic, though, down there. But if an enemy is ever involuntarily knocked down here, for example, or a victim goes down here, they just take the 1 health hit, which, of course, for a victim is enough to kill them. If anybody takes a hit while they're in a railing space, any of these ones with the little blue icons here, then they forcibly get knocked down and take that 1 hit without an ability to roll a die or anything to try to mitigate it. That's really only for when you, as the final girl, intentionally do it. And then you have all these stores. You have Zap Shack, Boards and Bones, Military Surplus Are Us, Joystick Heroes, Stan Sporting Goods, and Smokin' Subject. You'll notice that some walls have an actual entrance, the regular door to get back into the hallway. But when you're in one of these stores, just the stores, if anyone receives 1 damage, at least in one of those stores, they're basically thrown through a nearby wall into an adjacent space. Now, that has to be somewhere that doesn't already have a broken wall token that we're going to see, or a door. So like you couldn't be in Boards and Bones and get hit and go out here from the hit. You're going to bust through this wall or this wall. When that happens, you're going to designate that broken wall by placing one of these broken wall tokens, there are 6 of them, in between the 2 spaces. Now, as usual, your location comes with 5 setup cards. We have Family Dinner, Special Delivery, High Score, Black Friday, and Food Court Face-Off. But notice here, there is not just the numerical spaces for the victims, the symbol for the final girl and for the killer. There's also this S symbol, which is where the savior will go, the John Connor-esque figure of the scenario. There are also, as always, 10 event cards. Now, there are actually only 2 that use special victim meeples because you're going to represent the savior on the board if you don't have the mini with the orange special victim meeple, so it's already in use. So for the blue, we have Bart the mall cop, and then we have the savior's girl there in white. There's only one of these events that actually use a specific token. That here is lockdown, which basically locks both of the entrances and exits, and you put that token into security. And if you end the action phase there, you can remove the token, and as long as it's there, no one can be saved or exit from an exit space. But as soon as you get rid of that, it's fine again. That is simply this lock token here. Then for the remainder, we have Food Fight, Rise of the Nerds, Busted Escalators, Fire Sale, Renovations, Wet Floors, Flash Mob, and we're back to Food Fight. I would note here that Wet Floors really sucks because you can wind up very easily, because of those wet floors, sending victims down to their deaths. And it's not one that disappears. Once this is in play, it's just in play. Ouch. We have 18 item cards, the sort of regular ones here. We have self-help book, caffeinated beverage, grenade, walkie-talkie, flower box, titanium bat, lucky rabbit's foot, cigarettes, sneakers, leather jacket, knife, and then 2 copies of boomstick. Notice each only takes 1 hand, so you can carry them both at the same time, which is cool. If you have a boomstick in each hand, you may use both when attacking. That is freaking awesome, and it makes good use of those railing spaces here. And you have 2 copies also of gift card. The flower box, by the way, if you remember, T2 kind of plays a role in working with the boomstick. You can read it on here. You then have 3 other item cards that do make use of tokens. So we have Hackmaster 9000. Basically, when you're at security, same place you'd have to lift that lockdown, you could spend 2 time to place an alarm token, that is one of these, there's 2 of them, into any store, just 1 of them on a board at a time. Whenever the killer must choose a target, they'll choose the alarm instead. Then you discard the alarm token when the killer enters the space where it's located, but then you could use it again because it does have a 2-use thing here. There are 2 tokens. Why not just reuse the same token because only 1 could be on there at a time? Who knows? Then you got the banana peel with 2 banana peel tokens, 2 uses here. When in a railing space, spend 1 time to place a banana peel token in your space. Limit 1 per space. If an enemy enters a space with a banana peel, discard the token and the enemy falls over the railing, ending their movement. So that kind of makes sense to have 2 of these because you can't have 2 on the board, just only 1 per space. The last item here is the chopper keys. That is chopper as in the motorcycle, kind of like what Arnie is driving in T2. Not get to the chopper type chopper. That's more of what we saw back in Series 2. But here we have a token, and it's basically this little chopper token seen from above, or this is the vehicle miniature for this particular film, the chopper. It's actually going to start at the atrium at the beginning of the game. And once you get the keys, then while you're with it and you move at least 1 space, you may move up to 2 additional spaces with it. It can carry you and 1 victim or ally and cannot enter stores. If you enter space with an enemy, you may discard the chopper to do 4 damage, basically just running it into them, to the enemy, and 1 health loss to each person riding the chopper. So kind of a kamikaze type thing you could do with that motorcycle, but you got to find the keys and get to the atrium to get it to start with. Before we get to the savior, which is really the more complex aspect of this location, let's take a look at the 8 terror cards. So we have It's Coming For Me, I Gotta Hide, Relentless Pursuit, Paranoia, Fire Alarm, Collateral Damage, It Hits Like a Freight Train, Mallrats, nice reference there, and then we have 1 minor dark power, Twisted Bond. During the upkeep phase, move the savior 1 space closer to the killer. Ignore this effect if the savior has left play. 2 health on that one. Now let's talk about the savior, the thing that really makes this very different. So here is your savior ally card, kind of those big tarot-sized cards here. Starts with 4 health. And it's similar to what we just saw with the Hunter Mark V in that there are different actions that can be taken. When the action is taken, one of those white cubes goes on here. There are still only 4 white cubes, despite the fact that there are 5 possible action spaces, by the way. So they're a limited resource, kind of like time is a limited resource here. But again, you would do whatever the action is, place the cube, during the next upkeep, move it, next upkeep, move it, and so on. Once it's back off, the action is available again because now you have a cube you can use and a free left-hand space. But notice here that they're divided into sections. The sections are Eat Me, I guess you're okay, and I believe you. Different levels of trust that the Savior has in the Final Girl. As you play, trust will be increasing and decreasing between you and the Savior. It starts at the Go to Hell location. When it's at Go to Hell, they can't exit the board, so they cannot escape, which means that they are still a target. And understand, if the Savior dies, you lose. Period. Automatic ending. Now, if you save them, that doesn't actually immediately win the game for you. You still got to take out the killer. The crazy thing, though, is the little Final Girl targeting symbol, like that one here on collateral damage. While the Savior's in play, the Savior's the one being targeted, not you. You have to get them off the board to safety, and then you become the target again. And again, if the Savior dies, the game is over immediately in a loss. So you really want to get them out of harm's way and get them out of the mall so that, yeah, granted, it's coming after you now, but that immediate loss condition is off the table. But notice here under Go to Hell, they can't exit the board and they can't use any ally actions. That's why on that ally card, there isn't a Go to Hell level of actions here. Then Eat Me. Still can't exit the board, but can only use the bottom two ally actions. Again, categorized there as we saw on the card. I guess you're okay. Still can't exit the board, can only use the bottom four ally actions, which basically means they now can use 4 instead of 2. And then I Believe You, they can use all the ally actions, including the top one, and they can exit the board. If Trust goes up even higher than level 4, then I Believe You, you get to drop a horror. If it goes below 1, you gain a horror here. You'll be tracking the Trust with a little blue circular token. But how do you build and lose trust? Well, there's different ways that it can happen throughout the game, but the ways you can sort of control it here are these 2 new special action cards. Same card twice, Build Trust. Can only be resolved when in the same space as the Savior. If they're in their space, you bought one of these for 2, do a horror roll, 0 successes, horror goes up by 1, you lose 2 time. That sucks. Even 1, though, will increase trust by 1. It just costs you 1 time. 2 increases trust by 1 also without losing time. And 3 successes, which is unusual. Most cards only do 0, 1, or 2, but this one does have a 3. We've seen this before every once in a while. You not only get to increase trust by 2, you also move horror down by 1. So Build Trust is a big deal. I know sometimes you may not use the special action cards super often depending on the scenario. With this one, you absolutely will be a lot. I would note, by the way, that he does follow all the other ally rules except what is specified specifically for him, and when he panics, he does panic the same way that a victim does. But there's a catch. During the upkeep phase at the end of any given round, you are going to draw a Savior card. And this will do something depending on the level of trust, including Go to Hell. And generally speaking, the stuff lower down sucks for you. It's more dangerous for the Savior or could wind up actually hurting you, whereas I Believe You is, of course, better. So getting better as you go upward. Now there's 10 of these. You have 2 for, You're not the boss of me. 2 for, I'll hang out with whomever I want to. Although I must say, whomever instead of whoever. He may be a jerk, but he has good grammar. Then 1 each of Watch This, which is him being an idiot with the railing. I'm not going anywhere with you, which relates to time. You won't be needing this, where he might actually take an item from you. Let go, you're hurting me, which I'm assuming because it's you getting hurt, not him, that it's him like lashing back out at you, him saying this and then lashing out at you as if you were hurting him, but he actually hurts you. You're full of shit. I'm not in danger. Lots of horror level stuff there. I'm not stealing. I'm just borrowing. Which is either getting rid of item cards or letting you get an item card. Well, you'll notice that some of these up at the top will say stuff like, discard and draw a new Savior card if the Savior is not in your space or adjacent to your space. That tends to come up often on the ones that are direct interactions with you or you nearby. So this could actually run out faster than 10 turns. As to the board presence of the Savior, again, you're either going to use the orange special victim meeple, or there is a middle finger toting Savior miniature. And I should note here again that the Ultimate Box already includes all of the minis. If you're buying them piecemeal later, there will typically be a vehicles box for stuff like the chopper, and there'll be a separate miniatures box for the killers and final girls together. And in the case of everyone so far, there is also a little box of miniatures specifically for the vignette, which in this case is Terror from Destiny, that we'll see in a little while. But again, a great but very complex feature film here that could have two different allies running around the board at the same time, assisting you. And I would note, by the way, this particular film is one of the reasons why I say 60 micron cards, as I mentioned a moment ago. If you look here, the well for the small cards isn't entirely full, but then you take your large cards, where you got the terror cards, the savior cards, the action cards, all that stuff, and put it in here, you are basically at the absolute vertical limit of what this thing can hold, and it's really only going to stay in place because you're going to snap the cover onto this thing. And even then, it feels like the top card could even slide off the stack, still within that plastic cover. So 60 micron sleeves maximum. I personally use Sleeve King 60 microns, but anything beyond 60 microns, just know sometimes you're going to run into some films with a lot of cards, and they're just not going to fit. This brings us to our second film to check out, which is Hell to Pay, based thematically, loosely, on the Hellraiser films. I must say, this is probably my single favorite feature film of Series 3. So, we have Final Girl, Van Ryder Games, directed by Ryan Jajorian, if I'm saying that correctly, director of photography, Ryan McDonald, then starring Razorface, or excuse me, Razorface. Sorry, gotta do it. Spine says Final Girl Hell to Pay has Razorface, starring Razorface, featuring Hellscape. We'll see that in a moment. Other side, Van Ryder Games, Final Girl, Hell to Pay, Razorface, Hellscape. We know that layout by now. Bottom, similar information. There's your other side, swapping out the Final Girl, otherwise the same information here, and then featuring Hellscape as the location. And our information on the back of the packaging when it is in shrink. Misery loves company in the Hellscape. The denizens of hell are no stranger to pain and suffering, but you don't want any part of it. Razorface, a being of unspeakable evil, travels the shifting hellscape to deliver his love in the form of affliction and death. Manipulate the hellish maze so you can purge your afflictions and kill he who can't be killed before it's too late. So we'll start with the killer, Razorface. This is his board. Horror starts at 5, 9 health, space for 2 minor dark powers. Name Razorface. There is his Bloodlust track. There's his side of the box. His symbol is a heart with spikes going through it. You have your rule sheet, which is relatively straightforward for him. The big thing for him is afflictions. So we'll actually start with those. There are 8 affliction cards. At the beginning of the game, you shuffle these up and you draw 3. And the idea is you must purge your afflictions before you can kill Razorface. If you get to the point where you've dealt enough damage that you should be hitting him for that last health and flipping over his final health token, nothing happens with that final health token. He stays at 1 health unless you have the afflictions dealt with. So you can whittle him down throughout the game, but until you've purged your afflictions, you can't actually defeat him and win. This is actually the kind of thing that I mentioned previously when talking about Killer from Tomorrow, how sometimes there might be other win conditions specified in a particular film or for a particular killer or location. It's that sort of thing we're talking about, like with the afflictions here. And each of these, to purge them, means that during the action phase, something happens. Okay, something happens up here as the purge requirement. When you do this, you can choose to purge the affliction. You could choose to keep it, but then you have to meet the requirement again later. When you do that, you get the purge effect that happens, but then the affliction is gone. So for instance, with Experience Unbound, you need to achieve or use your ultimate ability during the action phase. When you do, you now have met the purge requirement. You can get rid of Experience Unbound. However, in doing so, Razorface will recover 3 health. So we have Experience Unbound, the Gift of Pain, Explorers of the Flesh, A Waste of Good Suffering, A Delicious Sacrifice, You Call, I Come, A Lamb to the Slaughter, and Torturous Embrace. For what it's worth, by the way, there is a rule built in to help protect you from situations where an affliction can't be purged because a requirement can no longer be met. Like, for instance, this says save 3 or more victims at the same time. Maybe there's not 3 or more victims on the board anymore, in which case you simply discard this and draw a new one. But if you ever have to draw a new one and all 8 have been used in the game so far, so there's none to draw, you immediately lose. He, of course, has his 4 finale cards, 3 regular, and then the one that is an epic finale unlocked through the stretch goal. So we have I feast on your pain. Taste our pleasures. Chains of torment. And then the epic, legendary suffering. And I should note here that while the epic finales are included in the Ultimate box, I believe that it works the same way as it has in the past, where the epic finales are actually inside the bonus features box if you're buying it separately. It's not included in with the film itself. The epic dark power is, but not the epic finale. That has always been the case. Then we have our 4 dark powers, 3 regular, 1 epic. Heliport, nice pun there. Soulbound, Life Drain, and the epic Infinite Despair. He then has the pretty typical 16 terror cards here. So we have 1 copy each of Pleasure and Pain, Enticed by Ecstasy, Sadistic Manifestation, Pain and Pleasure Indivisible, New and Darker Experiences, See the Purpose in Your Pain, Scarlet Hymn, What's Your Pleasure, and then 2 copies each of Ecstatic Torture and Brutal Reward, then 2 copies also of Violent Tastes. He has 2 minor dark powers. We have the Pain of Judgment and the Pain of Salvation. The cool thing with these is that it has this stuff that can happen, right? If you don't have an affliction when this card comes into play, discard this and draw the next terror card because it plays off of afflictions. Then it has something that happens while you have an affliction. Same type of thing over here, except discard this card when an affliction is purged. So if you have both of these even, and an affliction is purged, they're both gone. Pretty cool. Lastly, we have Razorface's Mini that be in, again, the Series 3 Miniatures box with Killers and Final Girls, or in the Ultimate box. For the 2 new Final Girls on the Killer side, we have Christy and Kenzie. Each has a secret envelope, of course. Each has a miniature that we'll look at. So for Christy, it is 5 health, 4 to unlock her ultimate. During the Killer phase, draw 2 terror cards instead of the normal 1. Choose 1 to resolve and shuffle the other back into the deck, which is nice because you can control that without it actually decreasing the amount of time you have left, because the one you don't resolve is going back into the deck. We have Kinsey, 5 health, 5 to unlock. Once during each planning phase, you may take all copies of a single named action card from the tableau for the price of 1. So great for the ones that have multiple copies, useless for the ones like Critical Blow that don't. And then here is Christie's Mini. And then here is Kinsey's miniature. On the other side, we have the Hellscape with some chain links here as the symbol. Now, I love the afflictions mechanism for Razorface. I also love the Hellscape and its special circumstances here, which are really cool. You notice here you got these blank spaces. We'll see how those work in just a second. So we have Hellscape, we have House of Mutilation, the Nexus, and Sepulchre of Blood as our item spaces. A little space for setup here. Notice we have our exits here, here, and the Nexus in the middle, where you have a space that's kind of both an exit and an item search space. But you'll notice, empty spots. How's that work? Well, at the start of the game, you're going to pull out so-called Hellscape tiles. The symbol in the corner is always in the upper left when it's on the map to make sure it's oriented correctly. They are also double-sided with different layouts. So let's look at those real quick. So here's this layout. Notice there's blue and red here to distinguish spaces. Flip it over. Again, also blue and red. Same thing on this one, blue and red. Here it's just the purple one. Blue and red combined, I guess. Then this one has 3 spaces, so we have gray, red, and blue. I guess that's blue. It is a little purple. I don't know. I'm seeing it with the glare and through the iPad screen, so what the heck do I know? So you have yourselves here a random setup to start with. During upkeep, you are going to roll 2 of these Hellscape dice. They have 2 copies each of each symbol, D8s. Really nice coloration here. You're going to roll these suckers. Now what happens is, if the symbols do not match, you are going to swap those 2. So for example, here we got the little clover looking thing and the sort of square with a circle in it. So I'm going to find those 2 and switch them. And everything that's on them stays. All tokens, the final girl, the killer, any victim. So you have to be very careful as you are moving them about. but mismatched symbols swap. If, let's say, we had matching symbols flip. So for example, squares with the circle in it, this tile would then flip, again keeping the symbol in the upper left so that the numbers are oriented correctly. So that's swapping and flipping. You might also have an effect for shifting. Shifting rotates the tiles in a particular direction by a certain number of movements. So in this case, shift each hellscape tile 1 space counterclockwise. So every one would shift 1 space counterclockwise. There's also rearrange, which lets you move them around and place them in whatever order you like, but you can't flip them when you rearrange. We'll see more about this in a moment. It's important, by the way, that if you flip, that's why these spaces are colored, because you'll need to make sure that whoever is in the blue space here and the red space here, that's where they end up when you flip it. It may be a very different orientation as in this case, but they do need to be in the correct colored space. Now, a few more notes about this, because this is kind of a complex board. Let's say you're in a situation where a panic direction would go into a wall instead of going into another space. You just ignore it if someone panics in that direction. When you are targeting for the killer will still target the closest target. So if it's the closest victim, they will target the closest victim. If they can't get to them because something is fully blocked off, then they stay where they are. When you are doing targeting for closest or farthest, then that's going to be through routes that actually can be taken that aren't blocked. And if you're ever told to place someone, placing is almost like teleporting. Placing is just put them there. It doesn't mean you have to move there through some valid path. You just pick them up and place them there. As to how you can control this somewhat, there is one copy of a new action card, Hell Shift. On 2 successes, you rearrange all hellscape tiles as you choose. On 1 success, you can swap any 2 hellscape tiles of your choice, but it does cost 1 time. No successes, you lose 2 time, and the cost is 2 time. But this is something that you're going to have to use kind of sparingly here, because there's only 1 copy. You're not going to be able to use it turn after turn after turn. There'll be at least a 1-turn gap. As far as the 8 terror cards from Hellscape, we have Spiral of Death, Plains of Torment, Spiral of Horrors, Death Labyrinth, Devoid of Life, Seductive Hell Pit, Home to Endless Appetites, and Hunger for Suffering. We then, of course, have 5 setup cards. We have Ecstasy, Rapture, Depravity, Sensation, and Revelation. But notice there's not really a whole lot of victims on here. That is because when you place them out, notice the Hellscape tiles that move aren't on here. You put 1 victim in each space when you start. That'll be 8 victims. Then you place more victims into those spaces marked on the setup card, along with the Final Girl and Killer. Then Hellscape has 10 event cards, of course. 3 of them use special victims. We have Sadistic Seeker, Masochistic Peon, and Curious Wretch. You have 2 that use tokens. So we have Torture Chambers. These 2 tokens here look like razor blades. You roll the Hellscape dice. For each die result, you place a Torture Chamber token on that Hellscape tile in the space of your choice. When a victim dies in either of those, you get +1 horror. Then we have Barrier of Blood with this blood token here. Place the Barrier of Blood token over the Nexus on the side of your choice. It is now only an exit or search space, not both. Ouch. I do think it's really cool that the Nexus is both, but this can stop that from happening. Then the other 5 regular events are Lost in Excess, Endless Suffering, Delight in Pain, Chaotic Transference, and Stare into the Abyss. Then we have 18 item cards, 16 of which are normal, Miracle of Faith, Pins of Pain and Pleasure, Halidai, Ancient Sword, Nexus Controller, Goblet of Blood, Book of Ecstasy, Gambler's Cube, Rusty Flesh Hook, Control Node, Amulet of Hell, Seething Orb, Spiked Whip, and then Discipline of Choices, Discipline of Cruelty, and Discipline of Courage. Then one that uses tokens is the Hellish Contract. It uses these 2 contract tokens here. Spend a time to place a contract token in your space. Whenever the killer enters a space with a contract token, you may lose 1 health to decrease horror by 3. And then finally, we have the Bone Key using a token or a miniature here. Place a Bone Chariot in the closest Hellscape space. Once per action phase, while with the chariot, spend 2 time to move with the chariot to any Hellscape tile space. That is, any of the 4 that can move. The chariot may move with you during normal movement, but may not be moved off of a Hellscape tile. And for this, you'll either be using just this little token to represent the chariot, or the miniature. Now, this looks a little weird from above. This is kind of what it looks like on the token, which may make you wonder what exactly this is supposed to look like. It's really cool from the side. Right, so these sort of bone horses pulling a chariot, but from above or on the token, it looks kind of weird. That brings us to our third feature film, The Falconwood Files, which is very close to being the most complex. I still think Killer from Tomorrow is the most complex, but this is a very, very close runner-up, and I'm sure someone will argue that they're in the opposite order. Either way, they are the two most complex feature films, at least in my opinion. So we have here Final Girl, our artwork there, Ryder Games, directed by Mike Martins, director of photography Vincent Dutrait, if I'm saying that correctly, starring Slayer, which is a fitting name for something based basically out of like the 80s. This side, Final Girl, The Falconwood Files, starring Slayer, featuring Falconwood. Again, bottom is the same kind of stuff, top is still blank. This side is again the horizontal version of the same thing. Ryder Games, Final Girl, The Falconwood Files, Slayer, and Falconwood. Your opposite side here, very colorful, but also the closer you look at it, the more disturbing it gets with the runny eyeliner or whatever, that would be mascara, maybe. The scratches and everything. So, you know, colorful but creepy still. Again, same information here except featuring Falconwood. Then our package back in shrink wrap about it. Something strange is happening in Falconwood. Peculiar events, missing people, and kids on bikes. These are all things you'll find in the town of Falconwood. You and your friends will have to complete a mission to uncover what is really going on and discover the source of it all. Slayer, an interdimensional creature with a mind to destroy the town you know and love, is pulling helpless victims into the mirror dimension. Will you be able to save them and put an end to the horror before it's too late? We'll start with Slayer. There is Slayer's symbol there. Slayer is pretty complex with a pretty hefty rule sheet here. There are others about the same size, but you can tell complexity as soon as you get one that actually has to fold open and use all the different sides of it. Here is his miniature. Here is his board, space for 3 minor dark powers. Horror starts at 4, health of 11, and there is his bloodlust track. Before we get into the stuff that really makes Slayer special and complex, let's take a look at the dark powers and finale. So here's the dark powers here. As usual, it is 3 regular and 1 epic. So the regular are mind control, renewed determination, master plan, and then the epic, it's in my head. Then we have the finale cards here with let's finish this. Welcome to my world. Interdimensional rift collapse. And the epic finale, your time is up. Again, epic finales are in those bonus features boxes for each series, in this case for series 3. It is in the ultimate box, but the epic finale will not be in the regular feature film box. Now the key here on these is this little symbol here that looks like kind of a white house and a black house kind of flipped over here, representing a transition from the mirror dimension. You will also see that symbol on some of the 16 tarot cards included here. So we have It Can Detect Blood, I Feel Something Evil in This Place, The Sky Turned Black, Hyperdimensional Travel, So Many Gone, This Place is Dark and Cold, What Is This Place? And then 2 copies of It Came Through the Wall, 2 of It's After Me, 2 of People Are Disappearing, and then 3 minor dark powers, interdimensional interference, zealous attacks, and interdimensional focus. Again, that symbol showing up. So the big thing here is that there is our dimension and the mirror dimension. And you have yourself a dimension tracker card here, which is going to track where the final girl and any special victims are, whether in our dimension or the mirror dimension. In our dimension, victims will follow you as normal. If you're in the mirror dimension, during upkeep, you lose 1 health, and these mirror dimension victims will follow you for the mirror dimension. So this will be just kind of like sitting out there in the play area somewhere, and you have these 4 tracking tokens, 1 for each special victim, and then 1 for the final girl, all with that symbol on the back. And basically throughout the game, as we see transitions between our dimension and the mirror dimension for the final girl or any of the special victims, you just move between these tracking points. But this is just for the Final Girl and special victims. Why? Because any regular yellow victim meeples that are pulled into the mirror dimension will be swapped with these gray ones to represent them being in the mirror dimension. When they come back out, they turn yellow again. There's 6 of these. So when you start the game, you put the tracker card out. You put the tokens for the Final Girl and the 3 special victims, just in case they come into play, onto the tracker. You all start in our dimension. You put one mirror dimension meeple into your space, which represents the idea that they're essentially in the same place, but they're in the mirror dimension and we're in our dimension. So right now, you're not technically able to interact with each other. You're going to put another one of these in the closest exit space to the Slayer. You'll also add a pair of new action cards to the tableau. It's 2 copies of the same thing. Cost of 2. On a 2 success, open a rift. Go to mirror dimension. Special victims may follow. Yellow regular victims cannot follow you into the mirror dimension, but yes, special victims can. 1 star, go to mirror dimension. Special victims may follow. Same kind of thing, except you lose 1 time. No successes, same thing. Go to mirror dimension. Special victims may follow, but you lose a health and lose 2 time, or you can just choose to end the action phase right then and there. So basically, this is your way of voluntarily going from our dimension into the mirror dimension. Slayer only moves within the mirror dimension, never ours. Although he does sort of pop up to attack you by sort of maybe opening like a temporary rift to hit you. As mentioned, only victims in your current dimension will follow you, so yellow in our dimension, gray in the mirror dimension. Can you save victims? Absolutely. But how? At any point in the action phase, if you are in the mirror dimension, you can choose to come back to our dimension, and any victims that are in the space with you can come with you into our dimension. So you'd replace the gray meeple with just a regular yellow one. Then you can take them to an exit space and save them, but they can't be saved from an exit space in the mirror dimension at all. Effectively, those aren't exit spaces in the mirror dimension, only in ours. Now, this could get somewhat complicated, so note here that search spaces, same in both dimensions. Doesn't matter which dimension you're in, you can search. And for simplicity's sake here, any tokens on spaces, any location effects, all those apply to both dimensions unless a dimension is specified, and unless a mirror dimension victim is specifically targeted. If there's an effect that targets a victim, it targets in our dimension first if there are victims from both dimensions in the same space. And how do victims get into the mirror dimension? That is that symbol there. And it is complex enough that there's actually a help card. There's rarely a help card in Final Girl, but there is for this one. So we'll just kind of take it from the top. So when that symbol comes up, like on a finale card for a killer action, or maybe on a terror card, you determine the closest victim in our dimension to the Slayer, who again is in the mirror dimension. If there's a tie, then from the space with the most victims. For a normal victim, you're going to replace the yellow meeple with a gray meeple. Basically, it had been pulled into the mirror dimension in that same space. For a special victim, you're going to move their token on that dimension tracker card that I showed you. And then as soon as they go into the mirror dimension, you're going to panic them. So they're going to get there, freak out, and probably move spaces, unless they just happen to roll something that keeps them in the same spot. If you've already got all 6 of those gray meeples out there, though, then the victim that's furthest from Slayer in the mirror dimension is killed, and that frees up a gray meeple to use for the new one that's coming in. If there are ever no victims in our dimension when you resolve it, you increase bloodlust instead. And when Slayer targets victims and there are no victims in the mirror dimension, you resolve that symbol again, this whole process, and ignore the rest of the killer action. So if he can't actually target someone there, he'll just pull somebody else in. There are reminders on the other side. Slayer is only going to attack victims in the mirror dimension. However, it can attack you in any dimension. To attack Slayer, you have to be in the same dimension, which is typically going to be the mirror dimension, hence using Open a Rift to go there purposely. The one exception is if you're playing a reaction card, where it's basically like popping out of a rift to hit you, then you can use a reaction card that deals damage to hit them regardless. Again, victims can only be saved via exit spaces in our dimension, as I mentioned. Tokens on spaces and location effects in general apply to both dimensions unless the dimension is specified, as I mentioned. Only victims in the same dimension and same space as a Slayer will panic during the panic phase. So if you have some in our dimension in the same space, but he's in the mirror dimension, they don't panic. They basically didn't witness what really happened. Now we know why you might want to open a rift and go into the mirror dimension. Why might you not want to stay there? Again, during the action phase, you can voluntarily come back out. No big deal. You don't have to do anything special. You just come back out. That is because if you're in the mirror dimension during the upkeep phase, you lose a health. So it's kind of a push your luck type mechanism here. Do you stay there to be able to potentially hit Slayer some more? Or do you get the heck out of there to avoid the health loss? But getting out means you're going to have to use another Open the Rift to go there intentionally. And it does indicate the same things that I mentioned there for the most part with the targeting. It is going to target the final girl or a victim, whichever is closer, only counting the victims in the mirror dimension if you're getting that symbol here, the anyone symbol, basically. If it's you and a bunch of our dimension victims in the same space, it's going to attack you, not the victims in our dimension. They're effectively immune. And when it's targeting the final girl specifically, it will target again regardless of which dimension, as I mentioned before. So this is really all about sort of controlling this dimensional shift that's happening here. It's pretty complex. I still argue it's not as much to try to track as playing with Hunter, though. But maybe that's just me. For the final girls in this one, alongside the killer, we have Octavia and Janelle. They have secret envelopes and minis, of course. Octavia, only 4 to unlock, 5 health. Her ultimate, place a tracking marker on the 0 value down here. After resolving a failed roll result, right? So one with no successes, on a horror roll, or saving a victim. Move the marker 1 space to the right. When you're about to receive damage, you may reduce it by the number on the space with the marker and then reduce the marker to the 0 value. So the more victims she saves, or the more she, takes her lumps by failing, the more likely she is to be able to prevent damage from a future attack. Then there's her mini. Then our second final girl here is Janelle. 5 health, 4 to unlock, another track. Place a tracking marker on the 0 value. After resolving a no success result on a horror roll or saving a victim, so same criteria as Octavia, move the marker 1 space to the right. When resolving an action card that deals damage, you may increase damage dealt by the number on the space with the marker, and then return the marker to the 0 value. So just like Octavia can use saving victims and sort of failing forward to build up the ability to protect herself, Janelle does something similar, except instead of protecting herself, she's dealing extra damage. Then here's her mini. And I must say, I think these are probably my favorite final girls of Series 3 mechanically, because of that cool track mechanism that they both have. What makes it even more complex is if you play with the location that's included, that is Falconwood. Symbol there being, it's a road sign, I suppose, like this. It almost kind of looks like a desk to me, but I guess it's meant to be a road sign. Rule-wise, it doesn't appear to be as crazy, but that is because there are missions involved and they all have their own special rules. This is your Falconwood map. It's all very Stranger Things-esque in feel, if you haven't figured that out from Slayer yet. 3 spaces here for item decks set up here, so 3 search spaces as you would imagine here. Key thing here, you get your river flowing down here, and there are bridge spaces that might be referenced, right, that cross the river. There are also these blue lines that are river crossings. River crossings are not normally accessible, but certain things might allow you to use a river crossing, in which case victims will follow you, but enemies will not. They're also not considered adjacent. Before we get into the stuff that really makes this special and different, let's check out those sort of common components here. So we start with setup cards. There are, as always, 5. 4th of July weekend, back to school, Halloween, Election Day, and New Year's Eve. We have your event cards here. So we have 2 of them that use special victim meeples. We'll see why the orange one is not used here in a moment. So we have head researcher and conspiracy theorist. Then we have some that use tokens. You have bridge repair with this token here that basically knocks out one of the bridges. You have grand opening, which is kind of the opposite. It gives you a new bridge over a river crossing. You have pizza delivery for the vehicle this time. Place the van token in your space. This token may move with you except over river crossings. As long as the van remains with you for the entire movement, 1 additional victim may follow you, and you get +2 movement when resolving actions that provide movement. However, your first move must be panicked. So for pizza delivery, you can either use the little token here, or the miniature here with the little pizza head guy on top. Then 5 more, we have Helping Hands, Freaks and Geeks, and Packed Bridge, which are sort of just kind of standard event cards. And then 2 of them that are going to use a D20, Game of Chance, and Dry Spell. So it includes a black with red numbers, D20, or 20-sided die. Then we have our 16 item cards, which oddly don't include any that would actually use tokens. So you have the shotgun, the flamethrower, the old revolver, dragon's breath, binoculars, shock stick, waffles, lucky dragon's foot, slingshot, pool noodle, AK-47, first aid kit, axe, trash can lid, wooden bat, and army knife. There are 9 terror cards included, one of which is specific to one of the missions, so I will set that aside for right now. Let's look at the regular 8. You scared the crap out of me! Were you two in the changing room this whole time? Never-ending attacks. I saw them leaving the makeout closet. Retreat! Retreat! Run up that hill! This indecision's bugging me. And code blue! But these 5 things here, these are what make it really special. These are the missions. So each of these is essentially its own little rule sheet. Gives you a little background on it, gives you which friends card, as we will see, is going to be a reward for completing the mission. It tells you what tokens you might need, gives you additional components listed, signing over to here, and the friend card here, so they're showing you over here, usually accurate, and then this part. Then we have the setup, special setup for that particular mission, any notes that are necessary, like in this case, you have tokens here that have multiple different things on them, letter, number, then there's numbers, there's a key in the middle, and it tells you which pieces of the tokens, of these multi-use tokens, you actually need. And you flip it over, it tells you all the rules that you need for the mission, how you gain progress or lose progress, and so on. So we have Save Your Father. It's going to use the 3 blank tokens, these sort of gray tokens, and all 6 of the mission tokens with those little keys in the center. This, by the way, is what the back of all those mission tokens look like. It's not the set symbol, it's setting these apart from other tokens. Now, I'm not going to go crazy and explain how every single mission works, but suffice to say, Save Your Father has you basically trying to free your father from the police station, and if you are successful, you get a friend card, in this case, Adopted Father. Now, finishing missions is important, not just to get the cool friend to play alongside you. They always give you some kind of really cool benefit here. It's also necessary as a condition to win at all. Just like with those afflictions and Razorface, if you have missions in play, you cannot remove the final health from the killer by hitting them and bringing them down to 0 and flipping their final health token. You cannot do that at all until the mission is completed. So you have a lot more to do before you can win the game, aside from just taking out the killer. For what it's worth, this is why we need the orange special victim meeple for you, because that'll always be your friend. Friends will follow you into the killer space, whereas regular victims and special victims will not. Other victims in the same space as the friend get attacked before friends are attacked, and friends do not panic if they're in your space. Then we have Missing Friend. This one uses all the mission tokens except the ones with blank sides. Your friend for this one is the Best Friend. There'll be a new mission item this time around, which is the Spell Book. Mission items, there's 2 of them, have this back on them to set them apart from regular items. The way you're going to save the Best Friend, and the way that you're going to get to use that Spell Book, which also reduces horror to 0 when you get it, which is pretty freaking awesome, is by collecting those tokens off the board. Because you have to figure out where your missing best friend is. And there are clues here that as you progress, you're going to get those tokens and they'll have those letter number combinations on them. Once you have 3 of them of different letters, so an A, a B, and a C, if you combine those 3 clues, that will tell you exactly where your missing friend is. This, by the way, is actually why there is an errata pack already. Notice that it needs A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. Well, originally the game had tokens with A1 and A2, which was fine, but then the other 4 tokens, instead of saying B1, B2, C1, C2, they just had A and continued on from A3 to A6. That meant that you couldn't actually play Missing Friend correctly. They noticed this very quickly, and even during Kickstarter fulfillment, they provided the corrected tokens. They did so on a separate little punch out with instructions on the side as to which tokens to replace that came in a little envelope packaged in with your Kickstarter delivery. But you'll notice that all the sheets still show A1 through A6. So they show those incorrect tokens. The other mission doesn't use them at all. That has led to a little bit of confusion because when setting up missing friend, it tells you you're going to be using, the A and B stuff, but it still shows those incorrect tokens. These two are still around. Those are the 4 that are replaced. So follow the instructions that are printed on the sheet, not the pictures. Next up, we have expose the lab. It will also use all 6 of the tokens, at least the ones that aren't blank, and now it's going to be using the single numbers, 1 through 6. In this case, the friend you can get is the reporter. In this case, you're using the other side of the missing friend card here with expose the lab, and you have those tokens that wind up going out on the board. So basically, you go to the government lab, and it'll reveal one of them, and it'll have a number, and that'll tell you where the next clue is. You go there, grab the token, it'll have a number, and so on, until you've done that 3 times to get 3 tokens. These just tell you where you're going to have to go to get them. And once you have all 3 of them, you go to the police station and expose the lab to win. Then we have crack the code. Just like the previous one, we are going to be using just the single-digit numbers 1 through 6 off the mission tokens. The friend you can get is Jockette, and you'll actually be using the D20 during this one. The way this one works is you are gathering tokens again for those single digits, and then when you're at the shopping mall, you can try to crack the code, and you'll roll the D20 3 times just to be able to have this opportunity. You'll roll the D20, add its value to all the values on your collected tokens. And if the total is less than 20, you've failed and you have to try again. But if it is 20 or more, you've cracked the code. Then we have survive the hunt. In this case, the last of the friends you can acquire here would be the kind scientist. And whenever you build a terror deck, you're going to build it with 1 less card, then take the top 7 and shuffle in this extra terror card to guarantee it's somewhere within the top 8. Survive the hunt. Like we've seen before, if another effect causes a card to be discarded, resolve this card's effect before discarding. So basically just trying to make sure that a very important card does have its effect. Start the Survive the Hunt mission. Refer to the mission rules for instructions on what to do next. And then it notes that this should only be in there if Survive the Hunt is the active mission here. The game starts off normal enough, but as soon as that terror card comes out, these 4 agents come out to specified locations on the board, and they are trying to take you down, but you have to take them out to win. They basically attack like minions, but they are not considered minions. They have 1 health, a movement value of 2, and an attack value of 2. Each one has an action during the killer phase that targets the final girl, then moves, then attacks. During the panic phase, victims on their space will panic. They're freaked out by what the heck is going on. And again, to win, you have to take out all 4 of them. When you do, you get the kind scientist and the special mission item, telekinesis. Now, in any of these cases, typically there are other rewards that I'm not mentioning at this point, but I'm trying to point out the ones that are sort of special. Telekinesis and the friends, those are special. The spell book, likewise. But for example, in this case, you also get to recover 3 health and lose 2 horror. That's not special stuff, that's just game effects in general. But yeah, the 5 missions make this a pretty complex location. Mainly because if you put them all together, it's a lot of different rules, but just playing with 1 isn't too bad. That's why I still think, again, this is probably slightly less complex, or maybe tied with Killer from Tomorrow. That brings us to our 4th feature film here. Boy, do I hate that glare on dark covers. But our 4th feature film here, The Merrick Murders. Again, Final Girl, Ryder Games, directed by AJ Porfirio, and director of photography, I'm not going to say this right, Agnieszka Dubrowica, perhaps? I apologize. My pronunciation is horrible. Starring The Tormentor. Again, bottom is same stuff, top is nothing. Spine, Final Girl, The Merrick Murders, image there, The Tormentor, starring The Tormentor, and featuring Merrick Warehouse. Other spine, Ryder Games, Final Girl, The Merrick Murders, Tormentor, Merrick Warehouse. The other side, set up similarly with just featuring Merrick Warehouse. Then again, the packaging back, Merrick Warehouse is closed for good. Traps, unsuspecting victims, and multiple murders. That's what happened on that fateful day at Merrick Warehouse. The state-of-the-art exit locks that were supposed to keep everyone safe held the victims inside, unable to escape. The tormentor used devious and ingenious traps to teach her victims what took her too long to learn herself. Life must be cherished and valued at any cost. To live, to truly feel alive, sacrifices must be made. Now, this time, let me show you the packaging with the insert stuff still in here because it is a little bit different. It's a lot more like what we saw with Panic at Station 2891. We have Tormentor. The symbol is a saw blade. Yes, this is loosely based thematically on one of my absolute favorite horror series, probably tied with Scream, which is the Saw franchise here. And there's large cards here that you'll need, so it actually has an indent in the lid, unlike most of the inserts. That's why I wanted to make sure to show you here. You have your rule sheet here for the Tormentor. Lots of information about traps and whatnot. These are way more elaborate traps, though, than anything we saw with Carnage at the Carnival. So let's look at her board here. 2 minor dark power spaces. Horror starts at 3, only 7 health. Kinda squishy. A relatively small bloodlust track with a special new symbol on it that refers to advancing traps. Here's the thing, though. The Tormentor doesn't actually start on the board at all. The Tormentor doesn't come out at all until the finale is revealed when the Terror deck is emptied. So let's look at our dark powers. The 3 regular are overkill traps, unfair traps, and horrifying traps, and then the epic dark power, endless traps. Then we have our 4 finale cards, but remember, she doesn't come out until the finale is revealed. So there's no killer action for her to do other than advancing traps each time that symbol comes up in the killer phase or elsewhere. Again, that symbol is going to advance traps regardless. Then once she's actually out, you notice that's when the killer actions start, and they're pretty crazy. So we have here no escape, game over, the ultimate trap, and our epic finale, no rest for the weary. I do want to focus real quick on this finale, no escape, which is pretty cool. So the killer action is that the traps activate, the traps move along once, which we will see. Then the closest unlocked door becomes a target of where they move. Not a victim or the final girl or anyone, but the closest unlocked door with a double movement. When the Tormentor ends her movement on an unlocked door space, they place a locked token there. It's door, exit space. At the start of the killer phase, if all exit spaces are locked, you lose the game. And there are some locations that might give you the ability to unlock a door, but most will not. This is an actual instance of a finale card with tokens involved. There are 6 lock tokens to put on those locked exits. Now, one thing I find interesting is that with the 16 terror cards, most are repeats. Only 1 is a one-off. So our one that only has 1 copy is You Have No Respect for Life. We'll come back to that symbol here in just a moment. Then 2 copies of We Have to Help, 2 of Let's Play a Game, 2 of You Don't Deserve to Live, 2 of Faulty Construction, 2 of Live or Die, 2 of Tick Tock, Speed Up the Clock, and 3 of Help, I'm Trapped. Now you'll see this symbol from time to time. That means bottoming the card. That means take the card and just put it on the bottom of the terror deck. And that kind of puts it in there so it'll come out again later. Like in this case, it's really based on victims being trapped. So if none are trapped, they're not going to just let you get away with it. You're going to stick it on the bottom of the deck. But that's kind of good because it does draw things out a little bit instead of losing some of the time to work your way towards the finale, find weapons, save victims, and stuff like that. If by chance, though, that symbol would cause an infinite loop of some kind, then you just discard the card instead. But you'll notice these symbols coming up. This one says victim, saw blade with victim. Or you got the ones that say Final Girl. What's the deal with those symbols? Well, that's where death trap cards come in. Here, we have 7 victim death traps. So basically, at the start of the game, you're going to have a victim immediately in a death trap in whatever space is marked as the killer on the setup card, because of course the Tormentor isn't out there yet. And anytime you see one of those symbols pop up that has a little saw blade and victim, you have to stick a victim in a death trap. So we'll look at all of them, but in general, basically this is what's going to happen. So swinging blades, for example, the victim goes into the death trap. You take the victim off the map and set them on the starting point of this track down here. You're going to take the matching little token here and place this in the space where the victim was to denote that that's where the victim is who is trapped in that specific death trap. And then every time that symbol is resolved, you move everyone who's on a track like this in a death trap to the next space and suffer whatever that consequence is. If they ever reach the end with the little sickle here, they die, bloodlust increases as normal, and you get hit with a fail result as well. Ouch. So how do you save them from the death trap? Well, you have a multi-part process here that during a single action phase you need to complete. So in this case, if I want to save someone from the swinging blades, then during that action phase, I need to spend 5 time to time the blades. I need to then cut the ropes. I need to deal 2 damage. Now, when you're using something to deal that damage, it's not like you get the effect otherwise. You're still able to deal damage to like enemies in your space or anything like that. Though in this case, there wouldn't be any. Unless again, maybe you're playing with Falconwood and you've already got, those agents out there or something. Because that's part of the location, not part of the killer. So it has to be used specifically for this. It could be multiple cards, but any that you don't reach just fades away. It's not like the progress is kept. Then lastly, in this case, dive to safety, move 2 spaces. So you're using action cards to do the stuff, basically, except for losing time and stuff like that. But for the most part, using cards to do stuff in a specific order, marking it off. And then once you've done the last one, and this can be across multiple turns to actually mark them off, but you can't do a specific requirement across different turns. So as you've done that, woo, they are saved, and the trap and its token are discarded completely. It doesn't save the victim, though. They don't suddenly become saved and go on your card to help you unlock your ultimate or anything. They're just back in the space again. So the other death traps for the victims would be the guillotine, the reverse bear trap, temple drills, fireworks target, infestation box, and drowning tank. Again, those all have tokens. There are then 4 that the final girl can get caught in herself, which are the super saw, the electric cage, the razor maze, and the slicer. So again, to get out, you have to do whatever it lists here, and you wind up on the start space when you are taken off the board by being caught in the trap. Again, every time the symbol comes up, it is advancing. If it hits the end, you are killed. And this is important, you are just killed. There is no flipping your final health token. This is not, oh, my health went down to 0. It is, you are immediately killed, period, regardless of what your health was. That said, if, for example, I start here and I go to this space when it activates, and that knocks me down to 0 health, something intermediate here or something like this, yes, that could wind up flipping your final health token. That's okay. But you are killed? Nah, you're just dead. You're gone. And again, each one has a token. Once she does come out onto the board, here is the Tormentor with her drill there. Then for the final girls with Tormentor, we have Cassie and Mandy, and I must say their miniatures are some of the least subtle that we have here. So we have the cards, they do get their secret envelopes, and they get their minis. For Cassie, we have a health of 5, 6 to unlock her ability. You may spend 6 time to double the damage from your next attack, including the damage from weapon modifiers. You cannot use this ability with reaction cards, or if it would take your time below 0. So get that critical blow ready to go, get a weapon, and nail the Tormentor, hopefully in one shot. And there's her mini with a big ol' axe. You have Mandy, 6 health, 5 to unlock. Then her ultimate, add 2 damage to attacks made without a weapon or item. You cannot use this ability with reaction cards. So this would be great if you don't have a weapon, or it'd be great if you have a weapon that only deals 1 damage, because remember, you can choose whether you use a weapon with an attack. So if your weapon would only deal 1 extra damage, instead you could use this and just forego the use of the weapon. And her miniature, not subtle at all, with a giant chainsaw. Then to remind us here that the real killer is the glare, I hope the information I'm providing is worth dealing with the glare. You have Merrick Warehouse, and there is your little crate symbol. Merrick Warehouse is the Tormentor's hunting grounds. And here's the map. So we have 3 spaces for items, a space for our setup card. I have kind of a love-hate relationship with this map. I love the mechanism of it, but it's really hard with my eyesight to deal with the sheer amount of numbers and stuff going on, so I have to be very, very careful when playing it to make sure I don't screw something up. So you'll notice here that we have the main entrance, loading dock A, and loading dock B. And then we have these red spaces with these little ladder looking symbols here. We also have in the center a special place called the pit. Those red spaces will use these special action cards here. Special not just in terms of what they do, but also how you get them. So basically, you can't purchase these normally. But anytime during the action phase, you can discard a walk to take one of them, or a sprint to take both. Climb is the only way that you as the final girl can get up onto one of those red spaces, the upper level, like climbing up on the shelves. So we have 2 stars, move to one of those spaces that's adjacent to you, lose 1 time, or same thing for 1 star, except you're losing 2 time, or 0, you hurt yourself, you lose a health, and then you return this card to your hand so you can try it again. Once you are up onto one of those spaces, you can use leap to move directly to another one of those spaces for 1 time or 2 time with 2 or 1 success. But if you screw up, then you have to move 1 space, which puts you onto the ground, and you lose 2 health in the process. Victims and enemies can move up and down those just fine. Victims will follow you. If you do fall, though, the victim will just climb down to check on you, not actually jump down to their death, thankfully. They're not as stupid as they sometimes are at the food court at Sunny Days Mall. But you notice here that gives you some nice versatility. There's a ton of spaces on this board, but it's a nice versatility to be able to jump between them and then go to whatever is adjacent by getting down. And climbing down doesn't take a special card or anything. You can just do that with a regular movement. But it's got to be, voluntary movement. You voluntary movement, you climb down. You screw up a leap and your ass falls down. Now, I'm going to leave the board out for a second because there are a couple of things to show you here. There's 8 terror cards, as is often the case. So the killer could be anywhere. We'll be safer up there. Let's open some of these boxes. I think I saw the killer. They were pushed. Yes, a question. They were pushed as opposed to they were pushed. And then 3 special ones here called click. When the game starts, you have these 3 lock tokens similar to the ones we just saw, except they have the other type on it. You have these little spaces here. That's why those circles are there to indicate that those doors are locked. When you create your terror deck, you set these click cards aside. And then after you have made your terror deck, you'll take the top 2 cards off and shuffle the 3 click cards into what's left, then put the other 2 back on top, just guaranteeing that none of the first 2 are going to be click cards. And each click card, basically, is all about unlocking one of those entrances. So as soon as it comes up, something's unlocked, and there's some other effect to go with it. Notice again, if any effect causes this card to be discarded, unlock the exit as described below, but do not apply any other effects. So another way of making sure that at least the important part of the card still happens if it's otherwise being discarded. While there are locks, unsurprisingly, you can't save victims at those exits. But at least you got frickin' click cards in case you get that no escape finale for Tormentor. As for the pit, we're going to see a forklift that starts there here when we look at the item cards. But the key with the pit is there are so many spaces coming out from the pit, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spaces coming out from the pit that you actually need to roll 2 dice and add up your results in order to determine panic direction. So let's look at those expected components here. So we have 5 setup cards as usual. We have You're Fired, Daily Huddle, Shift Change, Unloading, and Units per Hour. Then you have 10 events. So we have the 3 that deal with special victim meeples. We have the Supervisor, Heroic Best Friend, and Good Ol' Zip. Then we have Help on the Racks. Anyway, so Help on the Racks here. I wonder if anybody got that reference. But Help on the Racks, Smarter Than They Look, which is awesome because it allows them to actually use the freaking door even if you're not there to leave, at least if they're there. You Aren't Going Anywhere, which sucks because it locks all the unlocked doors again. Trucks are here. And then 2 of them that if they come out back to back really suck. Not that they don't suck anyway, events are usually bad for you. We have, it has been 0 days since. Whenever a victim is in a racks space, that's what that symbol means, it's racks, not upper level, racks. Whenever a victim in a rack space panics to a normal space, it is killed. Oh wait, scatter, panic all victims. Thankfully, it's just the one time, but that could get really ugly really fast. It reminds me of one of the very fast multi-death events in Haunting at Creech Manor. Then we have the one that uses tokens, tumbling boxes with severed head tokens. Yes, you put 4 severed head tokens in non-adjacent spaces, not racked spaces, they fell on the ground, basically. And yeah, when you walk in one of those spaces, I kind of freak out and horror goes up by 1, because it's severed heads in the boxes. We then have 16 items, 13 of which are sort of normal, and then 3 that use tokens and such. So we have two-way radio, chainsaw, 44 magnum, whip, power drill, bowling ball, bolt cutters, first aid kit, knife, a list of things in the hard hat, megaphone, trash can lid. Then we have plank, which can actually help with a couple of different things. So it's actually this little plank token here. It's actually kind of a long cardboard piece. And you just place this across to connect 2 of those rack spaces. And now they're adjacent. You don't have to use leap to go between them. And victims, when they panic, will always panic across it rather than down onto the ground, which is great if that 0 days since thing is in play, especially. Then you have odds and ends. It's basically booby traps. Placing a booby trap token on your space, 1 per space, during the action phase. And if an enemy enters a space with a booby trap, discard the token, and the enemy takes 2 damage. You have 3 of these made of odds and ends. You have your 3 uses there, and appropriately, 3 tokens to lay down. And then finally, I mentioned the forklift starting in the pit. You have the forklift keys. So the forklift will start in the pit. It's either going to be represented by a little token, or the forklift miniature. And when you find the forklift keys, then it can move with you. It can't enter search or rack spaces. While with the forklift, though, you can spend 1 time to safely move a victim from an adjacent rack space into your space. That then brings us to the last of the feature films in Series 3, though certainly not the last content of Series 3, as we will continue going through even more as we go along here. This is Don't Make a Sound. Now this one, as far as thematic influences, it seems to be kind of coming from a couple of different directions, whereas most tend to be more sort of focused on maybe one franchise that it's influenced by, or maybe one with a few little side items. This one seems much more like the killer is sort of influenced by something like, A Quiet Place or something like that, whereas the location is much more seemingly reminiscent of influences from something like Tremors. So we have Final Girl Van Ryder Games, directed by Katja Howitson, director of photography, Carrie L. Smith. Or perhaps Kari, my apologies if I'm saying that incorrectly, starring the Eyeless. We have our vertical sign here, Final Girl Don't Make a Sound, starring the Eyeless, featuring Utopia. The other side, horizontal, Van Ryder Games Final Girl Don't Make a Sound, the Eyeless, Utopia. The bottom, standard design again, top again, nothing. And that gives us the opposite side here for our location. Same design as typical, just featuring Utopia, our location. Everyone loves Utopia! The rural town of Utopia is home to just a handful of people and a whole lot of dirt and rocks. When the sand snakes burrowed to the surface to feed, there weren't a lot of targets to choose from. To make matters worse, the Eyeless, an extraterrestrial being sent to clear the Earth of its inhabitants, just so happened to arrive at the same time. With extrasensory hearing and lightning-quick agility, death will come quickly for anyone within earshot. Here is the killer's side of the box for the Eyeless. The symbol is kind of like an audio levels symbol. The Eyeless is the more complex of the 2 sides of this. So we have our rule sheet here, but at least the back doesn't add more rules. It just has some art there. Kind of nice they did some art rather than just leaving it blank. Here is the Eyeless's board. Space for 2 minor dark powers. Horror starts at 4, health of 10, and of course the bloodlust track over there. Not to cross franchises or anything, but to quote Arnold Schwarzenegger, "You are one ugly mother." He does look pretty cool as a miniature, though, ugly as he may be. Speaking of that artwork, though, we of course see them on the Dark Power and Finale cards. How's that for a transition there as it tries to focus on me? So we have a Reactive Swipe, Hard Skin, and Quick Counter as our regular Dark Powers. Then our Epic Dark Power is High Alert. Then we have our Finales. The regular killer action here, by the way, kind of nice, kind, because it targets and then moves rather than attacking. The attacks will be off of other stuff like the Terror cards, typically, until the Finale is revealed. Speaking of revealing the Finales are, "It knows my moves. No more running." Love that artwork there. It can hear everything, and the epic dark power, Final Slash. Yeah, the typical 16 terror cards here. We have one copy each of Shh. Not sure if that's the appropriate length for all the H's there. Is it nearby? Unlimited endurance. I'm not sure traveling as a group is the best idea. Yeah, split the party. Is that a severed arm? We have to make some noise. If we're careful, we just might make it. Blood-curdling screams. And then two copies each of This Thing Is Too Fast for Us, On the Hunt, and I have a bad feeling about this, so suddenly it's a Star Wars crossover. And then we have ourselves two minor dark powers, Blinding Speed and Fear Senses. Notice references to noise level here, and sometimes these symbols here with the Final Girl with a number on them, and an otherwise condition. That is all based around the concept of noise. So as you play, you're going to be tracking noise with this little wooden token here. Nice that it's wooden, not cardboard. And you're just going to track it there on the time track, except rather than starting at 6 and then going down or up as you spend or gain time, it starts at 0, but then it increases throughout the turn. Well, how does it increase? Now, first off, anytime you resolve an action card during the action phase, it's going to increase. Now, that does not include when you discard to get 1 time, or when you discard 2 to convert a partial success into a success, and it is only during the action phase. It doesn't clear out, though, and reset back to 0 until the end of the upkeep phase, and it is the end of the upkeep phase. Usually upkeep phase stuff is just, it happens during the upkeep phase, and you sort of have to use the rules of ambiguity to figure out what order to do them in if there are multiple. In this case, it really is the end specified. Say it's right there in capital letters. You also increase noise when using items, which is where these 4 helpful cards come in. These are your noise tracking cards. So essentially, if using an item can be done silently, like, using a first aid kit or something like that, or looking at a map, no big deal. It does not raise noise at all. Now, if it's something that could be heard by others who are near you in the same space, like melee attacks, pole vaulting, using a pickaxe, whatever, then it's going to increase noise by 1, and you have this little helpful card to use to make sure you remember. So you'll take your item card and just sit it on top here with the +1 noise sticking out of the bottom. So kind of overlapping like so there. On the other hand, if it's something that can be heard at a distance in other spaces like gunshots, a whistle, using a vehicle, that increases noise by 3. So it's 0, 1, or 3 when using an item, and 1 when using an action card, again, during the action phase. And there are going to be different effects that play off of that, usually relating to targeting. Like, does he know where you are? So in this case, you'll look here and say, okay, that's a Final Girl symbol. It's going to target the Final Girl if the noise level is 3 or higher. If so, goes after the Final Girl, right? So targets the Final Girl, moves, attacks. There's typically an otherwise to go with that, though, because if this condition isn't met, say noise level is 0, 1, or 2, instead it's going to target the closest, move, and attack here, right? So you can sort of play around with it, but it's very much a push your luck sort of thing. The more you do, the higher the noise, the higher chance you're going to be targeted. But sometimes you might want that. If you don't want bloodlust to increase by victims dying, you might want to draw it to you, maybe so that you can then move away and heal next time and kind of play a little rope-a-dope with them. I will note, though, that you can't just totally rope-a-dope them like across the map or anything, because it will go after you here only if the noise level is appropriate and it can reach you. So there is a second condition here. So noise level means look at this line, but then double check before you determine if you have to do the otherwise thing, if it can actually reach you in the first place. But if the noise level isn't this or higher, you don't even think about that row, you go straight to the otherwise. Our new Final Girls, again, which come on the killer side, are Rhonda and Megan. They, of course, have their secret envelopes and their miniatures. So, for Rhonda, we have 4 to unlock and a health of 6. Her ultimate, when this power is revealed, gain time equal to the Bloodlust level. Bloodlust starts the game at 0. When Bloodlust increases, you gain 1 time. For each additional victim saved, she gains a health. So a little bit of a balance there. So she's very much about generating time. And then here's her Mini, digging the hair on there. And then Megan, 5 to unlock and 5 health. Her ability, when the killer moves into your space or you move into theirs, you may recover health. If you are already at full health, decrease horror by 1 instead. That is gaining 1 health, of course. And then here's her miniature. With her hair, almost reminds me of Harley Quinn. And then we have our final location of Series 3, Utopia, with a little cactus symbol. Rule-wise here, relatively straightforward. You just need to know about sand snakes, sinkholes, and boulder spaces. This here is your map for Utopia. 3 search spaces as is typical, and setup up there. Then you got your exits in the corners. Some have asked why these exits stretch out rather than being enclosed. Like, why is there not a green line there? Because usually if it's enclosed, it's like a room somewhere, and here's just the idea that, they're leaving here and they're just kind of like wandering off the map. So kind of makes sense for them not to be closed off there. You'll notice 3 boulder spaces, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. And basically those are immune to having sand snakes pop out and try to kill you. So they are relatively safe locations for you and victims. And technically the killer too. So let's talk typical components. We got setup with sundown, monstrous stench, welcome to Utopia, trash day, and bouldering. So we have our 10 event cards, 1 that uses the blue special victim, defiant teenager, and then kind of cool here, we have doomsday planners that actually uses both the white and the orange. Typically it's one or the other. Then regular ones, we have maintenance check. We have to stick together. Dehydration. We need a plan. Stalkers. Get on the roof. And then we get into the ones that have tokens with them. Landslide kind of sucks. I mean, granted, a lot of the events do because they're meant to do bad things to you for the most part, but you'll put this token down on the mountain pass, and it's no longer an exit space. So on this giant map where you're moving people around, the bottom left corner, the southwest corner, is no longer an exit. You have to go somewhere to the east. Then we have Earthquake, which deals with those sinkholes. A sinkhole opens up. Roll to determine which space collapses. Crossroads or trailer park, based on the results there, place a sinkhole token in the collapse space and apply the sinkhole effects. So these are your sinkhole tokens. When you place one of these into a space on the map, a sinkhole opens in that space. It is no longer accessible at all to anyone for the entire rest of the game. Any victims that are there immediately die. Any enemies or the final girl who are there take 1 damage immediately, and then use the panic rules to move to the next space that doesn't have a sinkhole. As to the ones that can be taken out by sinkholes, that would be the trailer park and the crossroads, as we saw in that event there. But then also, thanks to some tarot cards, the water tower or the house could be taken out. So none of your search spaces, none of your exit spaces, none of your boulder spaces, but then still some of the regular spaces are safe. That'd be the scrapyard, the electrical tower, the old road, and the Jeep trail. Though again, as mentioned, the mountain pass could be taken out differently using that event. But it just closes it without all those sinkhole effects. So here's your 8 tarot cards. Again, there are 2 of them that relate to sinkholes. So we have Sinkhole. They're both called the same thing. This one forces the crossroads, but then has the trailer park as one of the options from a roll. Then this second one forces the trailer park, but then has crossroads as one of the roll options here. Then we have kind of a weird one. Lots of ways to die out here. We don't see this often, but this is one where basically the tarot card itself has a quick enemy that you fight as part of an event. In this case, a rattlesnake coming out for you. Basically, the way this works is that the rattlesnake appears and has 1 health. You can play action cards and inflict damage if you wish to take it out. If it's still alive, though, you take 2 damage. You can't defend as normal, like with a guard or retaliate or whatever. If you take any damage, bloodlust increases by 1, and then it slithers away, meaning it's gone. You're just discarding the tarot card as normal. We have, how many are there? All the sheep are dead. Untimely encounter. If we stay here, we will starve. And these 2 have no idea what they just walked into. Now let's take a look at items, and we actually do have some duplicated items here on purpose. There are 18 of these this time around. So you have the pickaxe, the elephant gun, the hubcap, the seismometer, the telescoping 10-foot pole, the old map, the first aid kit, the crowbar, the 6-shooter, the flare gun, the scoped rifle, and then 2 copies of household chemicals, 2 copies of canned chili, and 2 copies of canteen, and then 1 that's going to use a token. So this is the bulldozer keys. Place the bulldozer token in your space. The bulldozer may move with you. While with the bulldozer, you and all victims in your space may ignore the effects of sand snakes. That's freaking awesome, because sand snakes are what make Utopia sometimes suck. You'll represent this either with your little token, or with the little bulldozer miniature. And that brings us to the really cool and also really random and frustrating mechanism of Utopia, which is sand snakes. You have 12 sand snake cards here. And basically what's going to happen is at the end of the killer phase, you're going to draw 2 of these and resolve them both. And typically it's going to say pretty much the same thing. A sand snake attacks at the whatever the location is. The sand snake does 1 damage to 1 target on that space using the following priority. And note, you can use reactions to protect yourself because it is sort of a regular damage symbol, not the heart with a slash. The priority is to attack victims, then you, then minions, then the killer. Now, there are no minions for the eyeless, but again, these are all interchangeable, intermixable components here. So you have 1 for the sheep farm, the house, the crossroads, and if it's collapsed, you attack the bunker instead, the water tower, the general store, the electrical tower, the old road, the jeep trail, the trailer park, and if it's collapsed, you attack the bunker instead, and the scrapyard. These are kind of your normal ones. And notice there that even though there are 4 different locations that could fall into sinkholes, it's the 2 that are more likely because they're on the event and could be the ones that are forced to collapse at the top of those tarot cards. Those are the ones with that alternate target, which is the bunker, and the bunker otherwise doesn't have a sand snake attack card, so it's usually relatively safe, hence being a bunker. If you look here at the locations, every single named location with the exception of the bunker and the mountain pass can be hit by a sand snake attack, and the bunker can still technically be hit, but only as a backup if the crossroads or the trailer park are already collapsed. The mountain pass is the only named location that is fully safe. But notice those unnamed exit spaces over here and the boulder spaces do not get named. However, you also have this sand snake card. If you're on a boulder space, you may discard this card with no effect. So boulders are always safe, as I mentioned before. But otherwise, a sand snake attacks your space. The sand snake does 1 damage to 1 target on that space using the following priority: victim, you. Nothing for enemies or killers at all, and this is just wherever you are. So you could be in one of those exit spaces off to the east and still get hit if this one comes out. And buried in the deck is also this last sand snake card that simply says, after resolving and discarding the other sand snake cards that were drawn, shuffle this card and all the cards in the sand snake discard pile back into the sand snake deck. So you can't really entirely use process of elimination to figure out where has already been attacked, so what's safe. You can to an extent, but as soon as this comes out, all bets are off and everything is equally viable again because everything's been shuffled back into the sand snake deck. Sand snakes are usually what kills me when playing this feature film, not the eyeless. And I would note, by the way, sand snakes are not like minions or killers or anything. They just pop out of the ground, attack, and disappear. You can never attack them. Which does make it a little weird that as a snap gift here, we got miniatures for the sand snakes. And they look really, really cool. I actually like the look of these more than, for example, the sandworm minis in the Dune Imperium games. But they basically serve no gameplay purpose. They're just kind of meant to look cool. What I've done is I've used these to mark sinkholes, just assuming that since it collapsed, then there's one of these maybe sticking its head out that you need to avoid. That's why you're avoiding the space. But of course, there could be up to 4 sinkholes, and you have 3 of the minis. But if you've already got 4 sinkholes on the board, you're pretty screwed anyway. Your game is ending soon, probably. So now that we're done with the feature films, let's check out the vignette for this series, Terror from Destiny. Again, there's a little miniature pack that goes with it that you can get. Terror from Destiny itself and the miniature pack can fit into your Series 3 cast and crew box for storage. Now, before we dive into these, how do you actually get your hands on these? Well, they're sold separately now, or they're in the Ultimate Series 3 box. But originally, well, Terror from Destiny itself, the vignette, without the miniatures, was a standard stretch goal, just one of the few that's not inside the guest stars box, and that was unlocked at the $1 million stretch goal. The little miniature pack that has 5 miniatures that we will see in detail later, those were a premium stretch goal, but not inside the guest stars miniatures box at the $1,700,000 stretch goal. Now, for what it's worth, Terror from Destiny is by far the most complex of the 3 vignettes so far in the series, and I would say it is one of the most complex things to play for Final Girl at all. So we have Terror from Destiny, a vignette expansion for Final Girl, directed by Evan Derrick, director of photography, Tyler Johnson. Blank top, UPC on the bottom, nothing on the sides or anything like that. The back, however, lays out the premise, which will feel very familiar to fans of a series called Final Destination. The five close friends should have died in a horrifying and bloody accident. Only because of a freakish premonition did they manage to avoid the accident and escape the Reaper's blade. But now they are dying one by one in increasingly bizarre accidents, and it has become clear that some power from beyond the grave, call it death, fate, or destiny, is taking the lives that were stolen from it. Can you solve the puzzle of who is fated to die next and get to them in time before the long arm of destiny claims yet another victim? If you can't, then there's no hope that you will survive this terror from destiny. This is a vignette expansion that can be used in combination with any location, one of which is included in each of the Final Girl feature film boxes, sold separately. So again, your vignette essentially replaces the killer. You do still need a location. Though in this case, it's not really a killer per se, but we'll get to that. For what it's worth, by the way, there are tons of cards and tokens for this. I, again, have sleeved everything in 60 micron sleeves, and it just barely fits. I will show you how near the end of this segment. Then, of course, any of the vignettes are going to come with one Final Girl rather than two. So for Gabrielle here, we have her card, her secret envelope, and her mini. I would note, by the way, that there was no unlocking for this vignette secret envelope like there was for Terror from Above or Terror from the Grave. It was just sort of included normally without ever being part of that stretch goal list. So for Gabrielle, we have 4 to unlock, health of 5, her ultimate. Once per action phase, you may look at the top card of any deck or the Dark Power or Finale cards. She sort of plan ahead, basically. And then here is her mini. The rules are pretty extensive, with quite a few example visuals to make sense of it all. It does fold up, though, to fit inside the package, as you can see here. And there is the symbol. It's sort of that hand with an eye inside it. So first, when you're dealing with a vignette, you don't actually have a killer board. So instead, you have a Bloodlust track card, or pair of cards typically, that you then just lay together there on the table. Horror starts at 5. It does still note that. There's your Bloodlust track here with the different things that can happen. This one also has a limbo space. And a reminder here of what we'll see in a moment. If there are no longer any fated victims on the board, resolve 2 terror cards during the killer phase instead of 1. So this will be just kind of laying out on your table. Of course, these Series 2 mats actually have a space for these slightly off camera here. You do have dark powers here for this one. As was the case with the other vignettes, there is no epic dark power. It's just 3 regular ones. So we have Hourglass of Despair, Double Trouble, and Existential Paralysis. For what it's worth, this one does not use finale cards at all. Instead, there's a destiny phase as the end game. So we have 17 regular terror cards. There'll be 5 special ones that we will see. We have 2 copies of Destiny is Mocking Us. This symbol here indicates activating an effect that is found on the Death Order card. We'll look at those in just a moment. We have Death is Coming for Us All, No Escaping Fate, Nowhere is Safe, Destiny Roulette, Nothing is Safe. We had Nowhere and now Nothing. Death Craves Our Blood, Buffet of Existential Dread, Challenge Fate. I really enjoy this one because of the whole dice rolling aspect of it. The Ruthlessness of Destiny, The Cruelty of Destiny, Violent Paranoia, Tragic Accident, Mass Hysteria, and then 2 minor dark powers, Extra Paranoia, and Maw of Fate. Notice here, though, that in this case, since there is no killer to deal damage to get rid of the minor dark powers, there's a separate condition here, kind of like what we saw with getting rid of the afflictions back with Hell to Pay. In this case, discard this card when you roll at least 2 successes when resolving a premonition action card, which we're going to see, but only discard 1 minor dark power per resolution, which does set it apart in that case from what we saw previously with the afflictions. You're going to make yourself a normal terror deck with your location and Terror from Destiny terror cards shuffled together, but you're going to deal out only 8 to start with. One of them is going to be set aside because it's going to go back on the top at the end to guarantee that the top card is not one of these special cards. What are those special cards? Well, those 5 terror cards are known as the Fated Death cards. There are 5 of these, all with different effects for Saved and Limbo, which we'll look at mechanically here in a moment. That's all 5 variations there. And these are critical, by the way, to the game. So if another effect causes this card to be discarded, you resolve this card's effect before discarding. That is the case for all of them. So again, you'll remove the top card, shuffle those 5 in with your other 8, and then put this back on top for a total of 13 cards in your Terror deck. 5 of which are guaranteed to be Fated Death, but the top one of which is definitely not Fated Death. Now, the idea is that there are 5 special fated victims in this game, and you are going to need to save them, but you have to save them in a very specific order in order to avoid consequences of doing it wrongly. Just like in the Final Destination films, right, where death is coming for them in a specific order, typically the order they would have died originally. The way that this is determined is one of 3 so-called death order cards. We have Highway to Hell, Death Coaster, and Death at 30,000 feet, which should all feel, again, pretty familiar if you're fans of that franchise. And the idea is you're going to have tokens sitting on all 5 of the spaces, and they go in a specific order of death, as we will see. There's also that symbol in the corner that I showed you on the tarot cards. When one of those is revealed, that's when you do whatever it says up in the corner. And bear in mind that, of course, many of the films are going to have killer actions there on the tarot cards, but there is no killer to have a killer action. So instead, anytime you see a killer action like, target victim, move and attack, or whatever, each of those would be treated as if it's one of these symbols. So at the start of the game, you have 5 tokens, round ones here, that all indicate a specific fated victim, and all have the death's head skull symbol on the back. They all get shuffled and placed on the death order card, indicating the order they must be saved to avoid penalties. There are a matching 5 square tokens for each of the fated victims, and to start with, they are going to be placed out on the map through a very unusual process. You got these 5 weird long tokens. These are basically creating a grid. Now you can tell what orientation they're supposed to go by looking at the die faces that show them in a particular orientation. So this one's going to go with the blue triangle facing up. This one, nope, with the blue triangle facing down. The arrows need to essentially connect, and you got yourself, sorry about the glare, you got yourself a grid here. And what you're going to do for each of those fated victims at the beginning of the game is have 2 dice, designate one as essentially the vertical coordinate, one as the horizontal one, and roll. And then looking at the specific results, that's going to tell you essentially which little area, which of sort of 6 separate little areas you could put that fated victim into. The space has to be at least halfway within that particular little 1/6 in order to be viable. You can't put a fated victim with the final girl or with another fated victim. And you can't put a fated victim in an exit space. So using Utopia as an example here, we have ourselves those 3 exit spaces. Those are not viable for fated victims. So you'll put them out, and then you'll use a regular setup card to put out all of your regular victims. I would note, by the way, that fated victims can never become special victims. So maybe this is my initial layout. If by chance I was in a position, though, as I was putting these out, that there really wasn't a valid place to put one based on a die result, I would just roll again and keep rolling and keep rolling and keep rolling until you have a legal placement for all of them. For what it's worth, each of these tokens has a miniature in that fated victims miniature pack. So this would be the jock. They don't have names listed inside the vignette itself, but on the miniatures it'll say it at the bottom. The goth, the cheerleader, the bookworm, and the rebel. The next 2 sets of cards we're going to look at will make more sense when we see them together, but suffice to say, there are a total of 10 so-called consequence cards. There's a space for a token or a mini on top of each one. Little arrow here as well that's going to matter. It says consequence on them. You only use 5 of these per game, so there is some randomization. And there are different things here that you must have accomplished to avoid a punishment. Now, it's a little hard to get these to focus, but to show you all 10 of these, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hey, it didn't go out of focus once. Oh, there it is. It tried. You have 10 punishment cards. These are things that can happen to you if you don't meet certain requirements on the consequence cards. There are 10 of these, Again, you'll only use 5 per game. They will be shuffled and dealt out, but in this case, there are some repeats. 1 can cause you 1 health loss. You have 1, 2 for 2 health loss, 1, 2, 3 for 3 health loss, 1, 2, 3 for 4 health loss, and 1 that has no effect. Let's start pulling this stuff together, and again, it is pretty complex. So we have 5 consequences laid out with 5 punishments underneath them. We have this little tracker that's going to tell us which one we are on at the time. We again have our bloodlust track. In this case, we're really caring about the limbo section here. And we have our death order card with all those tokens face down on it. So fated victims could wind up with the same 2 consequences that pretty much any victim could run into, right? They could be killed, or they could perhaps be rescued. So if a fated victim is killed, they go into limbo. Bloodlust does not increase immediately for that, unlike how it normally works. If they are saved, then they get placed on top of whatever the lowest space is, the earliest in the death order space is, that is still unrevealed on the death order card. As you are playing, you will go through the regular killer phase with the terror card. And if a fated death card comes out, the process begins to figure out if you saved in the correct order. If there is already a token on top, you're going to set it aside for just a moment. You're then going to flip the token. So in this case, it was the bookworm, not the goth, so it's a mismatch. Of course, it could also be that they do match. Or it could be there was no one saved on that space, you hadn't saved someone, so it's revealed, but there's nothing set aside to compare it to. The results will differ. If it was just a death token by itself, there was no fated victim on it at all, then when you flip it up, you find that particular fated victim on the board and you kill them. They might also be in limbo. They could also even be on a different token over here, but not the right one. Still kill them. At that point, you're going to increase bloodlust by 1. Then you're going to place that token, and if they died, onto whichever consequence card has the arrow above it at the time. If they do match, then you have saved that victim. They're not considered saved when you first get them off the board and place them over here. They're only saved if you save them in the right order, essentially. So if they do match, meaning you save them in the right order, you take their token, stick it over there by your Final Girl card, and at the beginning of the next action phase, you get the bonus that you would typically get from saving a victim. And on the Fated Death card, there'll be a little saved section. You'll get whatever that reward is. If there was one on it that you set aside, but they don't match, then you kill them. So again, bloodlust up by 1, and they go on whatever consequence card the arrow is pointing to. If they're in limbo, you kill them. You put them, again, wherever the little marker would tell you to put them, but you also suffer the limbo effect on the Fated Death card. Then once you've done whatever the effect was, either killing them, saving them, whatever, when you're basically at the last step of resolving that Fated Death card, you're going to scoot this over to the next space. And you will remove the token off of the Death Order card. So basically, the space here, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, is always going to match 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, whichever is the next one that needs to be revealed. Now, whenever you get to the point where there are no more fated victims on the board, you continue to play the game, but you're going to draw 2 terror cards each killer phase instead of 1, as we have the reminder here on this card. As to what the results will be for any of these fated victims who wind up dying rather than being saved in the correct order, this is where the Destiny phase comes in. So after the last terror card has been resolved, there is no finale. Instead, you go to the Destiny phase. And essentially, you're going to look across here. And any of these that have a fated victim token on it, you're going to have to flip over. So in this case, we have 2 of these. And I need to check to see, did I actually meet whatever the requirement is? In this case, you must have saved at least 5 victims, not including fated victims. Place them on this card. You must have at least 4 items. Discard them now. If you cannot do what the requirement is for that consequence, you must flip over the punishment and resolve the punishment. If, after going through all the consequences and resolving the punishments for any that you didn't meet, you are still alive, you win the game. If not, you lose. And you might say, man, that's tough because I'll never know what's underneath these. How do I know what to prepare for? Well, that is where new action cards come in. There are 2 copies of a new action card called Premonition. You actually are meant to use 1, but if you want a little bit of an easier game, you can put 2 into the tableau. Cost of 2, it's one of those rare cards that actually has 0, 1, 2, and 3 star or success results. If you get no successes, horror increases by 1 and you lose 1 time. 1 star, reveal 1 unknown. 2 stars, reveal 2 unknowns. 3 stars, reveal 3 unknowns. What's an unknown? An unknown is basically anything that is face down. It could be one of the tokens on the Death Order card. It could be a consequence card. It could be a punishment card. It could be an event, the next terror card, the top of an item deck, and so on. A number of unknowns based on your results will be able to be revealed to let you know what's coming. Then you can prepare. Personally, I'm all about using them for these, but if it comes down to it and I've revealed most of these, I'll also check these. Or if I know for sure that I've got 1 on a card, I'll check it, then I'll check the consequence to see if I really need to do something to beef myself up to be able to survive. There is 1 other new action card included. That is Thwart Destiny. It's a reaction. Basically just ignore 1 Destiny symbol. Cost of 1. Only 1 copy of this. So as I said, definitely my favorite vignette, but pretty freaking complicated. So how am I going to get all this stuff back in here? Well, I have all my regular size cards here. Again, sleeved 60 microns. I'm going to put these in here and let them kind of be the thing that's sort of resting against the side with the flap. I'm also going to put the rules in here. I find that it is easier to put the rules between the last couple of cards rather than sitting it out on either side. It's just easier to get it in and out that way. Now I have a little space here. I got all my small cards. I'm going to put my small cards in here. Once they're in there, they're going to kind of rest against that edge and leave me with a little space. That's where I'm going to put the little grid marker things here. Then I got my tokens in a baggie, kind of pressed down to the edge of the baggie. I'm going to fold that over. I'm going to stick that in here. And now it is closed. So it is possible sleeved, just a little tricky. But another case where anything beyond 60 micron sleeves is not going to work. Now, the Ultimate Box, like the previous storage boxes, includes a cast and crew box for this series. So Final Girl Cast and Crew Series 3, Ryder Games. On the side here, you have Final Girl Cast and Crew. You have the character there of the Savior, Series 3, and nothing on the back or top or bottom except the UPC. And then you do have a horizontally oriented other side if you want it, Ryder Games Final Girl Cast and Crew Series 3. This box opens up just like the ones we've seen before. And what you have here is a layout of what goes in here and where. Secret envelope cards, Final Girl cards, the individual miniatures for the Final Girls, which are all labeled. Of course, they're labeled on their bases as well. Fated Victim miniatures, and Terror from Destiny itself. So basically, you would have your little container here for our Terror from Destiny Fated Victim minis that we've seen. Over on this side, you've got Terror from Destiny. And then up here, you have your tray full of miniatures, nicely snapped shut, and enough space underneath for the Final Girls for this series, plus their items from the special secret envelopes. Again, we won't look at those until later, but obviously they're item cards. That's not really much of a spoiler. I would note, though, that when we're talking about Final Girls from the series fitting in here, it's just the ones from the feature films and from the vignette. Any of the promos and whatnot, they belong elsewhere, as we will see in a moment when we look at the special effects crate. Then you also have the bonus features box for Series 3, which gets kind of heavy with stuff in it here. So Final Girl bonus features Series 3, Ryder Games. Final Girl bonus features Razorface, Series 3, nothing on the back or top, bottom except the UPC, and a horizontal orientation here as well. Ryder Games Final Girl bonus features Series 3. Inside it tells you what should go in here. Gruesome Death books for Series 3, lore and scenario book, and feature film rulebook. So let's take a look at those. So first, if you don't want to use those little rule sheets that come with each feature film on either side, there's a feature film rulebook for Series 3. Typically, these are also made available digitally. So it's just all the rule sheets together and achievements for each location and killer. This was the $800,000 standard stretch goal. Then we have the lore and scenario book, which was a stretch goal at $400,000. Again, standard because it's not a miniature type thing or anything. So the way these work, if you haven't seen them before, it is kind of like a little miniature campaign where you're taking one killer through all 5 locations, and it has some cool narrative to go with it. You've got some background information on the individual final girls and such. I am particularly fond of this one because if you look at the credits in the back, lead playtesters, there I am. First time seeing my name in print related to Final Girl. That was really cool. Then each location, and again, I apologize for the glare here, each location gets a gruesome deaths book. These were a stretch goal at $1,225,000, and this was sort of split when it came to standard versus premium. So as a standard stretch goal, they'd be released digitally for everyone. However, if you wanted them in physical form, that was a premium stretch goal. And that is a big deal because in the previous series, it was stretch goal was digital for that series, and then in the next series Kickstarter, you could get it physically. So series 1, digital only, but you could get them physically in series 2's Kickstarter. The Gruesome Death books for series 2, digital for series 2, but then in the series 3 Kickstarter, you could get them as a physical add-on or in the series 2 Ultimate box. This is the first time that both digital and physical versions of Gruesome Death books for a series were released at the same time, essentially. So Series 3 gets them for Merrick Warehouse, Utopia, Falconwood, Hellscape, and Sunny Days Mall. And again, if you're not familiar with how these work, basically you pick your location, who the killer is, up there in the corner, and they'll have different types of death narrative to read depending on the circumstances that causes a victim to die. So it's just a lot of flavor to add to the game. Now, currently unique to the Series 3 Ultimate Box, we have the Special FX crate. This sort of replaces what in Series 1 and 2 would have been the little VCR box that had the playmats in it. Instead, we have Final Girl Special FX crate, has kind of that lock there, and the chains going around each side, and just the wood grain type of effect there on the back. This is essentially where you're going to have some new accessories that are kind of similar to how we would have gotten the playmats before, but also where the stretch goal boxes are going to be. Because the regular standard stretch goals are going to be in one little box in here, and the premium ones, which are primarily miniatures, are going to be in the other. So let's pop open the Special FX crate. What you got inside are 3 boxes, accessories, guest stars, and guest stars miniatures. We will look at each of these in turn. The accessories are, again, things that are not related to stretch goals here. So you have Final Girl accessories, you got the chain going around it again, and the back gives you a sense of the contents that are in here, though we will be looking at everything. The supplemental game mat, the dice tray, the 5 tier markers, the 6 tier dice, the tier board, then a UPC website, all your standard information there. You have a little sheet here that again talks about the content that's in there and basically just what the supplemental game mat and the dice tray are for. Then you have your dice tray, a nice snap together dice tray there on the 4 corners. Relatively small, so typically you're not going to roll a ton of dice at once, usually 1 to 3, might be up to 6, but that might be pushing it depending on circumstances. But it can happen. If you go beyond that, you just are re-rolling the same dice again and just keeping track of your results. But a nice compact little, nice feeling dice tray with the logo. And of course, one of the things people talk about with Final Girl all the time is the fact that it can be a pretty tough game, and the dice might hate you sometimes. So this is effectively easy mode, the so-called tier dice. They come with a little rule sheet here, we'll come back to that in just a second, a board, some tier markers, little tier tokens. They all are just these little blue tokens here, remind me of the water tokens in Dune Imperium. And then you have 6 tier dice. And you'll notice that the face for 6 is still a success, 5 is still a success, 4 is still a partial success, so is 3. But on 1 and 2, instead of being blank, there is now a tier symbol. The idea is that when playing the game, you would completely remove the red dice and bring in the tier dice instead. And when you do a horror roll, if you're successful, it's just normal. Nothing changes. However, if you fail the horror roll, meaning you have no successes whatsoever, so maybe you've got 2 and a 2 here. So you've rolled 2 dice, that is a failure still because you had no successes. But since it's a fail, you collect a tier to put on the tier board for each of the tier symbols showing, so on a 1 or a 2. And then at any time, you can spend those tiers off this board to get an effect for 1 through 5 tiers. Essentially, failing upward, so to speak. As you fail, you gain a resource that allows you to do something helpful later. Now, normally you can only collect 5 tiers. There are 5 slots, 5 tokens, and there are actually 2 sides to what you can get. So on side A, as you collect them, you can spend 1 tier to get 1 time, 2 to reroll 1 die, 3 to lower horror by 1, 4 to reroll any or all dice, and then 5 to get +2 tier dice for horror rolls for the rest of this turn. But there's an alternate side. Side B has different effects. We have 1 still gets you 1 time, 2 will let you move 1 space, 3 will let you on a particular roll turn partial successes into successes, so 3s and 4s become successes. 4 lets you roll 6 dice, and 5 lets you reveal your ultimate ability without actually earning it first. And the rules lay all of this out, and they have a nice explainer for the different abilities and whatnot here, but also some variants to go with it. I'm a big baby lets you collect a tier even if it's a successful roll. So remember, initially, based on what I had said, this here would be a successful roll. You got 1 success. You wouldn't collect the tiers at all. You only collect the tiers if it is a true fail. None under I'm a big baby, you still collect them. It's not fair lets you collect unlimited tiers. Basically, instead of putting them on the board 1 at a time, you move them up to get to 5, and oh, I've got 5. Okay, next one. 6, 7, 8, and so on. Effectively unlimited tiers. Or I want both. Which is basically during the upkeep phase, you can spend 1 tier to flip to whichever side of the tier board you want to use. Again, effectively an easy mode. For the last component of the accessories, I apologize, I am having to really kind of stretch my tripod to its absolute maximum here. It's a supplemental game mat. So you got your regular mats, right? You have the part that's supposed to be close to you, that's going to have your horror track, whether it's Series 2, as we're seeing here, or Series 1. You got the top part that has a killer board and location board, but it's 2 mats you just put together in this type of configuration here. Season 2, Series 2 had a lot more stuff on the mats than Series 1 did. But now we have this separate little board off to the side that has a place for more feature film special cards for the regular size, horizontal, more feature film special cards, either horizontal or vertical here, tokens, miniatures, and miscellaneous, a place for the dice tray to go. Then under that, a reminder of the different phases and their pieces, and a place to actually put your current hand. So you have a current hand and your play area, and then your tableau, your market off to the side there. And for what it's worth, I am using a card table here. I want to say it's about 35 inches, give or take, square. And this just barely fits on there with a little bit of the stitching hanging over the edge on either side. Let's talk about the Guest Stars box. This is the box that is going to hold all of the non-deluxe stretch goals, the standard stretch goals. We're going to talk about them as we look at different pieces of material, so not all at once here, but just be aware that this is where you're going to find those non-premium stretch goals. The premium stretch goals are basically just the miniatures. So it says Final Girl Guest Stars, nothing except the little chains on any of the sides, and then the back lays out what's actually in here. And it's kind of an eclectic mix. So along with your UPC and all that typical address and whatnot information here, we have the contents. There are 11 secret envelopes. The secret envelopes are effectively spoilers. So we are going to look at what's in those secret envelopes for all these different Final Girls at the end of the video in the spoiler section. There are 5 signature action cards. These add to the ones that were previously found in the box of props. 5 vehicle action cards. Those go with Terror from the Grave, the vignette from Series 2. 15 proxy event cards. 3 proxy item cards. 4 Final Girl promo cards that we'll look at when we look at those specific Final Girls. And 2 character packs that are kind of like sequel packs. Carolyn's Revenge and Grandma's Grudge. We'll be looking at both of those individually here in a moment. There are tool rulebooks in the Guest Stars box, a vehicle rulebook that we'll look at as we look at the vehicle cards, and then your Guest Stars rulebook lays out the specifics of how to use basically everything that's found in it. The packaging here is a snap-on kind of cover. I've taken out much of the stuff because we're going to see it at different times. We got these little packs here for the character packs that we're going to look at, and then a space here for 2 sets of cards, which are your proxy event and item cards. So back during Series 2, during its Kickstarter, the $1.1 million stretch goal was to have a new tool online that lets you create your own items. The issue there, of course, is that if you are creating your own items and then printing them on something like cardstock, even if you sleeve them, you're going to know when you see them which ones are the ones you made versus the ones that are effectively legitimate components of the actual game. So, as a snap reward, something not tied to a stretch goal, just sort of gifted during the campaign, they provided, for Series 3, 3 new item cards that have number 1, 2, and 3 on them. They're proxy item cards. Put these in your item decks. You're not going to be able to tell that these are ones that you made, but when you draw it, match the number to the one you created, and then use that item. Then at the $1,525,000 stretch goal, they also added a new create your own event tool, and along with it, some proxy event cards that work the same way, right? Stick them inside the deck. When you draw it, you know that that's the time to use whatever event you created, which is cool. The trick here, though, is that, with the event cards, the fronts are always just the information for the event itself, but the backs don't just say event, they have a symbol to let you know which set it comes with. So they gave a proxy event card for all 5 films in Series 1, all 5 for Series 2, and all 5 for Series 3. But it does not include one for Santa's Village from North Pole Nightmare. So you have Camp Happy Trails, Creech Manor, Sacred Groves, Carnival of Blood, and then Maple Lane from Series 1. Then you have the USS Conrad and Station 2891, Wingard Cottage, Storybook Woods, and Wolf Asylum from Series 2. And then for Series 3, you've got Utopia, Merrick Warehouse, Falconwood, Hellscape, and Sunny Days Mall. You might remember that the box of props included 10 signature action cards that you can include 1 per game to give you some kind of super abilities, essentially. Well, the Series 3 Kickstarter gave us 5 more. They are not in the box of props, but box of props is here to show you where this concept originated. We have Will to Live, Bribe, Kick, Prescience, and Combo. We'll look at them individually here in just a second, but it's key to note that these were the $1,150,000 stretch goal. So we have 2 that are reactions. We have Will to Live, and then we have Bribe. Okay, so notice reactions, they're used when you are being attacked. So in this case, can only be played immediately after revealing your black final health token. So you've been attacked, you've been hit, your health is down to 0, you flip your token, and then maybe use this. It may only be played if you have at least 1 item. So you can be attacked and discard an item, a random item that is, as part of Bribe to try to maybe get out of that damage. Then we have 2 that are just sort of regular action cards. We have Kick, which is cool. You can't use weapons with it because you can't attach them to your freaking feet. But notice here, there's a potential ouch kind of motion here. So I like the fact that you've got this ability to deal 2 damage or 1 damage, right? Cost of 3. But those would end the action phase. If you fail, you have a cool choice here. That's what I really like about the card. You either just kind of let it whiff or take a damage, like if you got 1 success result on a weak attack, but then you resolve it again. A chance to do damage again, but also for the action phase to end again. So it's kind of like an ending of your turn kind of thing to try, an ending of your action phase kind of thing to try. Then Prescience, one of the few that has a 3-star potential result. It lets you basically manipulate the terror deck, though it's interesting that the 3-star version, yeah, it lets you get rid of a terror card that you don't like, but you do wind up with less time because, of course, that means the finale comes 1 card sooner. And then we have Combo, basically doing 2 action cards off of 1 roll, cost of 1. You'll typically now store those with the other signature action cards in your core box. You may remember, back with Series 2, that Terror from the Grave, when you're playing against the zombies, has some cool mechanisms using vehicle cards. The thing about it, though, is that the vehicles were all based on the ones in the previous feature film. So you have vehicles from Series 1, vehicles from Series 2. There's even a print-and-play vehicle card for North Pole Nightmare. Well, what about Series 3? Well, turns out that was the $1,425,000 stretch goal to get vehicle cards for Terror from the Grave from the 5 feature films here from Series 3. So we have the Chopper from Killer from Tomorrow, that is Chopper as in the motorcycle. The Forklift from Merrick Murders. The Bulldozer from Don't Make a Sound. The Bone Chariot from Hell to Pay. and the van, the one that works a little differently here, from the Falconwood files. There is, by the way, a little rule book here, Vehicle Action Card Reference Series 3, that gives you the rules and some information about each of those vehicles. Now, because we're going to start seeing these premium stretch goals in the form of miniatures, let's check out the Guest Stars Miniatures box just to kind of know what this is and how it's configured. So, we have Final Girl Guest Stars Miniatures. The back lists the miniatures that are inside for Agnes, Carolyn, Grandma, Jamie, Layla, and Paula. Of course, we got the UPC and the standard information there. Just sort of the chain stuff on either side, and on the bottom, and on the top. There is kind of a little rule sheet inside. It's called a rule sheet, but basically all that it's saying is just who these miniatures are for and why Julia and Constance don't get them. As to organization inside, you have another those snap-on covers here, and then you have a space on the side here for all 6 of the new minis that we're going to be looking at as we look at those individual Final Girls. You have yourself a place for the content of the secret envelopes, and then a place for all of the related Final Girls. So this would be all the ones that were promos, including Julia and Constance, who don't actually wind up getting miniatures. Then we have an empty space up here. I'll address what I would suggest putting there when we get to the spoiler section. Now, as we look at the Guest Stars box, we are going to find that typically as stretch goals, we got a secret envelope for a particular character and a miniature to go with them if you got the Guest Stars Miniatures box. So, in order to hit all the stretch goals kind of in a more efficient manner, let's look at it right now. No, we're not looking at the items inside the envelopes. That'll wait for the spoiler section. So we have 2 Final Girls who have promos available outside of the regular series who are also included in the Guest Stars box. That is Jamie and Paula. Paula's miniature and secret envelope was unlocked at $500,000, and Jamie's at $1,375,000. Then we have our 2 Final Girls who are from the vignettes in Series 1 and 2, who got miniatures, but never actually got secret envelopes. Melanie's secret envelope was unlocked at $1,550,000, and Patsy's at $1,625,000. Then we have 2 characters who are guests from the Dark Quarter. I know there's some glare on Julia here. We have Constance and Julia. They don't get minis because the minis are in the Dark Quarter, but they did get secret envelopes finally as stretch goals. Those were unlocked together at the $1,475,000 stretch goal. Then we have Layla and Agnes, also both from the box of props. However, in both of these cases, they actually gave us extra copies of them inside the Guest Stars box this time. So we have Layla and Agnes. Layla's miniature and secret envelope were unlocked at $1,075,000, and Agnes's at $700,000. The actual secret envelopes and their contents were available to anyone who got the standard stretch goals, which basically means the stuff in, again, the Guest Stars box, whereas those who got the premium stretch goals got the miniatures for all but these 2 in the Guest Stars Miniatures box. Again, we will see the secret envelope contents in a little bit. Now, you might recall that in Series 1 with Terror from Above and Series 2 with Terror from the Grave, we got 1 Final Girl each, which is the standard for a vignette, which were Melanie and Patsy, and they did wind up getting miniatures back in their respective series, but they never got a secret envelope. Well, this begins a pattern here in Series 3 of what you might call retroactive stretch goals to enhance previous content. Here, we have Melanie getting a secret envelope at the $1,550,000 stretch goal, and Patsy getting a secret envelope at the $1,625,000 stretch goal. We'll see what's in them in a little while during the spoiler section. Because this is where their miniatures and vignettes are stored, this is typically where you're going to store Melanie and Patsy in the Series 1 or Series 2 cast and crew boxes. Now, you may remember that in the box of props first available through Series 2, there were 4 promo Final Girls in there. Constance and Julia are guest characters coming over from the Dark Quarter, so Julia and Constance won't get miniatures regardless because they are to use the minis from that game, though there has been talk from time to time about maybe somehow making them available separately, but nothing has come of that thus far. Then you have Agnes and Layla. They are brand new Final Girls for Final Girl itself. They're not guest stars from anything. They were simply created through stretch goals and whatnot during the Series 2 campaign. But all of these were included originally in the box of props. Well, as noted, Series 3 is giving us some secret envelopes for all 4 of them, which we will be looking at in the spoiler section. But also, if you got those premium stretch goals, the same stretch goal levels that brought you The secret envelopes gave us a new Layla mini and a new Agnes mini. I would also note that one kind of cool thing that they did was they did not assume that everyone has the box of props to be able to use those miniatures. So they actually included Agnes and Layla as extra cards inside the guest stars box. No extra cards for Constance or Julia. And they flat out say in the instructions, hey, if you've already got these, just give them to a friend or something. It was a nice touch to be able to make sure that folks who now had the secret envelope and a miniature for Agnes and Layla could actually use them, regardless of if they had the box of props. For what it's worth, and boy, do I detest the glare in this room, but it is the only place that I can record, so again, I apologize. If you are looking to get yourself miniatures for Constance and Julia, they are in the game The Dark Quarter, as I mentioned. So The Dark Quarter has multiple different boxes. This is the core game box for Dark Quarter. This is where you will find their miniatures. In the base game of The Dark Quarter, they are 2 of the 4 playable characters, but that does mean that if you do want minis for Constance and Julia, whose names, by the way, are Constance Moreau and Julia Paris, you can find them inside The Dark Quarter. So this here is Julia, and this is Constance. You can't see it on her Final Girl card for Constance, but she is meant to have sort of fire coming up from one of her hands. Now, you may recall that they have essentially released a couple of promo Final Girl cards outside of the regular cycle of the series. First, it was Paula from Watch It Played, and then Jamie from Foster the Meeple. And these are basically available in different ways. In the case of Paula, she was available individually from Watch It Played from Ryder Games within the Series 2 Kickstarter. She's now included in the Series 1 Ultimate box. This promo version of Jamie that has the I Love Cons shirt is from Gen Con 2024. But again, they want to make sure that if you've got a secret envelope, unlocked through stretch goals, and a miniature, unlocked through stretch goals in Series 3, for these characters, let's make sure you can actually play with them. So they gave us alternate versions in this case of both Paula and Jamie as part of the Series 3 Kickstarter inside that guest stars box, and in the case of the miniatures, obviously in the guest stars miniatures box. Note for Paula, all they've really done is they've given her essentially a Santa hat for this new version. For Jamie, this is the version that actually was known before the promo came later. It's just sort of a regular hoodie. We've looked at their abilities in previous videos. For Paula, this is her new miniature. And then for Jamie, here's hers. That Holiday Paula, by the way, was considered a snap reward. In other words, something not tied to a stretch goal, just something that was sort of gifted at a certain point within the campaign. This brings us to the first of the character packs. Now, the character packs are a little bit unusual. It's not a killer, nor is it a location. So it's not like a full feature film that has both. It's also not like a vignette that only has a killer. Instead, it's effectively a pack just for a special Final Girl and some unique mechanisms to go with her. And this was a stretch goal at $1,300,000. The pack itself was a stretch goal. There's a secret envelope for Carolyn, which was also a stretch goal. Those are considered standard. And then, yes, Carolyn actually gets a new miniature included in the guest star miniatures box. That was a premium stretch goal. So it says Carolyn's Revenge, a character pack for Final Girl, directed by A.J. Porfirio, director of photography Tyler Johnson. Flip it over and it tells you a little bit about it. Think of this as kind of a sequel to Haunting of Creech Manor. Carolyn slowly approaches the front door. Her breathing is even and measured. Her eyes begin to glow a light blue as the power within her manifests itself physically. Carolyn stops to take in the creepy exterior of the place she once called home. "It's time," a childlike voice squeaked. She looked down at Mr. Floppy and nodded in response to what was really her own thought, but one she attributed to the stuffed rabbit. Carolyn walked forward, psychically unlocked and threw open the front doors with a simple thought, and then raised her voice and boomed, "Helen, I'm home!" This character pack contains the Teenage Carolyn Final Girl card, psychic action cards, and more. Now a teenager in control of her psychic abilities, Carolyn has returned to Creech Manor for revenge. You don't have to play it with Creech Manor, but that is sort of what thematically it's meant to be the sequel to. So you got a little set of rules just for her, and it is somewhat elaborate rules for her. So first we have Carolyn herself, her Final Girl card. Notice here that every single one of the rewards is to take a specific card, and these are cards specific to Carolyn's Revenge, so it's a way of getting those cards. She has 5 health, and her ultimate, during the upkeep phase, take the Psychic Expulsion action card, even if it was just played this turn. For each additional victim saved, 1 health increase. She has a new little miniature here, her holding Mr. Floppy. There. Found in the Guest Stars miniature box. It was a premium stretch goal. And as one of the standard stretch goals, she does have a secret envelope. We'll look at what's in it a little bit later. She has 3 special item cards that come with her. She starts with 1. The other ones may or may not, up to you, get shuffled into the location deck before you set up the item decks. So we have Tarot Deck, Talisman, and Crystal Ball. She has 7 special action cards, though 2 of them have 2 copies, so it's actually 5 unique cards here. So we have Psychic Expulsion. This is another way to win the game. You could just kill a killer if it's allowed to be killed, unlike Poltergeist, the normal way. Or you could go after Poltergeist, which you usually can't, or any other killer with a Psychic Expulsion. First off, you have to have either the Dark Power revealed or Carolyn's ultimate ability unlocked for this to be viable at all. You can buy it beforehand for 6, but you can't actually use it until those conditions, or at least one of those conditions, are met. Then, while in the killer space, roll a number of dice equal to the amount of psychic damage dealt to the killer. We'll see that in just a moment. If the number of successes rolled is greater than the number of victims that have been killed, the killer has been expelled. Otherwise, remove from the game 1 victim from the dead victim space for each success that was rolled. I would note you can also actually use this to reduce that victim count prior to meeting whatever conditions are necessary, like these, to actually expel the killer, but you can't actually expel them without meeting those conditions. Or if there's other conditions that usually must be in place for you to take out a killer, you still have to do those as well. So what's this psychic damage thing? Well, one aspect of it is the Psychic Charge card, cost of 3. On 2 successes, you attune 2 weapons or items. On 1 success, you attune 1 weapon or item, but you may treat regular orangish damage icons as blue psychic damage icons. If you fail, lose 2 time, don't get to do anything. Only 1 of those. There's also Psychic Travel, not considered a move, so victims can't follow you. It's basically like a teleport thing. So 2 successes, place yourself in any space. 1, place yourself in any space, and lose 1 health, so you kind of hurt yourself in teleporting. And then no successes, you can still place yourself in any space. You'll still lose the health as you did for 1 result, but you also have to panic yourself once you arrive. Then 1 time you can buy Psychic Focus, which allows you at 2 stars to take 2 Psychic Attack action cards, and 1, take 1 Psychic Attack action card, or lose 2 time if you fail. There are 2 of these. Notice here Psychic Attack, which was just referenced, cannot be purchased with time. You can only get it as a reward for saving victims or by using Psychic Focus. But Psychic Attack is like a regular attack card, except it's dealing psychic damage, blue damage here. 2 damage for 2 successes, 1 damage for 1 success. If you have no successes, you don't deal any damage, but you get to take a Psychic Focus card so you can try again to get a Psychic Attack card, or you can take 1 time, and that's on a fail, which would allow you to purchase a Psychic Focus if necessary, or anything else of equivalent cost. So Psychic Charge talked about attuning items. So if you attune an item, then what's going to happen is you'll take one of these 4 attuned item cards with a little set symbol on there, which in this case is a crystal ball, and you just lay this out, and the item card just sits on top of it, basically like this, right? So it's kind of glowing around it. And an attuned item, particularly an attuned weapon, for example, that's going to deal that regular sort of orangish damage, the physical damage, you can then choose whether you want it to be physical damage or psychic damage that's being dealt. Psychic damage is different than regular physical damage, so you're not going to track it on the regular killer health track. Instead, there are psychic damage trackers, 3 of them, with different colors, gray, black, or red, just in case you have multiple killers that you're tracking. But you just track it on here. So back to Psychic Expulsion, right? You're going to build up that psychic damage as you go. And that gives you a number of dice to roll. So you can be rolling like 12 dice. And if the number of successes you roll in that roll is greater than the number of victims killed, the killer gets expelled. You don't reveal their final health token or anything. You don't check their physical health, nothing. They're just expelled, blasted into the void. They're gone. You win. If you aren't successful at that, though, at least you remove one victim from the dead victims pile for each success that was rolled, making it easier next time around. Now, as this is a sequel where little Carolyn is now teenage Carolyn, you could go after Helen, her nemesis, the poltergeist, in her regular or alternate mini form. All the minis except this one, of course, being from Series 1 in some fashion. But if you're going to play this as a true sequel going after the poltergeist, there are some terror cards that you'll need to replace, but only in this specific instance. Obviously, Carolyn, where are you makes no sense, because it says if Carolyn is not with you, etc., etc., and then talks about Carolyn, the item card that you have to hunt down during the regular battle against the poltergeist. Now, it's basically hunting you. Carolyn, where are you is to move 2 spaces towards the poltergeist, and then if you're in that same space, they'll be able to attack you, or a victim in the space, and if you're not in the same space, horror increases by 1, effectively. 2 copies of that to replace the 2 copies of the original. Nothing is as it seems. Again, if Carolyn is with you, makes no sense. Then it has you dealing with the item deck, and then has a condition based on whether you reveal Mr. Floppy or Carolyn. That doesn't make sense. So nothing is as it seems is now to shuffle each item deck, but do not reveal the top card of each. Just makes it harder to get items that you need. And then you can discard 2 psychic action cards to take the top item card from the item deck of your choice. You just don't know what it is, and horror goes up +1. Then the minor dark powers have been replaced, because originally the minor dark powers have no health damage that you can do to get rid of them, of course, because you can't deal regular damage to the poltergeist. Now you can deal psychic damage, so there are new versions of Unseen Forces and Psychic Confusion that can be removed, but only with 1 psychic damage. And you would deal the 1 psychic damage to remove the minor dark power, and then the rest of it would go to that regular card that I showed you a moment ago. So the original 2 basically got discarded if Carolyn was with you. Obviously, that's not going to be a thing here because you're Carolyn. Now, for Unseen Forces, the effect is actually the same. Your first space moved each action phase is panicked. The difference here being that to get rid of it, you need psychic damage, not to find Carolyn. Psychic Confusion is different. In the case of the original, you would roll 1 less die when resolving a search card, which is how you find Carolyn. And you can spend 3 time before playing the card to get rid of that penalty for that search. Whereas for the new Psychic Confusion, it's 1 less die when resolving a psychic action card. But again, prior to playing the card, you could spend 3 time to ignore that penalty. So they're somewhat similar in how they play out, but they're tweaked for the fact that you actually are Carolyn this time, and you can deal psychic damage to the killer, the poltergeist. But again, only used when playing against the poltergeist, regardless of location. But if Carolyn's Revenge is awesome for making you feel super powerful, Grandma's Grudge is the opposite. It's awesome for making you feel fragile, which I know sounds weird, but it really is fun to play here. This is essentially kind of a thematic sequel or tie-in to Once Upon a Full Moon. This is basically Red Riding Hood's grandma. This was the $1,750,000 stretch goal. Again, the pack itself and the secret envelope are considered standard stretch goals. The miniature that'll go with this is considered a premium stretch goal. So it says, Grandma's Grudge, a character pack for Final Girl, directed by Julie Aaron, director of photography, Tyler Johnson. The shiny back here lays it out. Quote, "Get back in bed, Grams, I'll handle this," Red yelled as she exited and closed the cottage door. Grandma harumphed. "Oh, child," she said out loud, even though Red was gone. "I'm not the helpless old woman everyone thinks I am." Grandma shuffled around the cottage for a few minutes, gathering knickknacks and baubles, which might be useful. Screams echoed from the woods outside. "I'm coming, dearies," she said as she opened the cottage door, large carpet bag in hand. "Now where is that little pup?" she asked herself, tightening her grip on the bag, that of course being the big bad wolf. This character pack contains the Grandma Final Girl card, Grandma action cards, and more. Having just survived the big bad wolf's ploy, Grandma's got a grudge to settle. So we again have a separate little rule sheet, not as complex as Carolyn. We have a new Grandma Final Girl. This is the crazy part. 1 health. Grandma only ever has 1 health. That also means she always gets that benefit of the extra die from being down to your last health. Her different rewards are all about getting cards. Retaliate and Guard are regular cards to help protect her, but she also has some of her own cards that she can also get this way. And her ultimate, whenever you are in the same space as a victim, or if there are no victims on the board, +1 die for all of your horror rolls. For each additional victim saved, reduce horror by 1. So if she's around someone else that she can be protecting, basically, some other person, or if they're all gone, and she is sort of left to her own devices, maybe enraged about the fact that everyone's gone or whatever, then she gets an extra die. So she already gets the extra one here, now she gets an extra one there as well. She does have a miniature in the guest stars miniatures box, Grandma, and she does get a secret envelope found in the guest stars box. We will look at that in the spoiler section. So before we look at her other components, she has some special rules here, right? So as I mentioned, she's always in her last health, so she always gets that adrenaline rush extra die. She can always play reaction cards to prevent damage, even if the killer, location, or other effect rules would say that she can't. And any of those regular slash through the heart symbols, it usually just means a loss of health that you can't defend against, is treated as if it is one of those regular damage icons, so that yes, she can defend against any loss of health, even that type, which most of the time you can't. And there's a new panic rule here. If a victim is in her space and panics, yeah, they panic like normal. But anyone who's away from her who panics, any victim that's not in the same space as Grandma, instead of panicking in a random direction, moves closer to her, kind of looking for comfort. So first off, Grandma has 3 special item cards for herself. Those are the good plates, knickknacks, and knitting needles. And how many of these you start with and which ones is going to determine your difficulty level. You'll always start with knitting needles, even if you're playing on hard. If you're playing on normal, you're going to have knickknacks with knitting needles, but you're not going to have the good plates. If you're playing on easy, you'll have all 3. Now in her case, she also has some special action cards, 7 of them, but she's also removing action cards from the regular tableau and from your starting hand. So you're going to get rid of short rest and long rest, because since she only ever has 1 health, those are pointless, right? If she were to use them, she could never gain more than 1 because her maximum is 1, and if she has less than 1, she's dead already anyway. So those are gone, and she can move, but she's slower than others. So rather than having walk, 2 copies of that in your starting cards, and then sprint, 2 of those in your tableau, you have 2 copies of slow walk for 1 time. And then for free as one of your starting cards, you have steady walk. Then she also has rally, which basically lets victims do damage for you. Gather the flock, which lets you move victims. And then help, where basically if you're being attacked, you can yell for help, hence it's blue, a reaction card, and a victim from an adjacent space will basically jump in to protect you and take the hit instead, which will typically kill them, but you're still alive. Honestly, it's hard for me to say which of these I like the most. I love feeling as powerful as Carolyn here and actually sending her back against the Poltergeist, because that's one of my favorite films from Series 1. And I'm not as fond of Once Upon a Full Moon, but Grandma is just awesome because she's a much more sort of dynamic final girl that's kind of thinky, because she's so different than the others. Carolyn and Grandma are definitely the most unusual final girls in the series thus far, which makes sense because they're character packs. All right, so blank playmats here to emphasize a point. We are now going to be moving into the spoiler section. If you are only wanting to see all of the major content here for Series 3 and do not want to be spoiled on the contents of the mystery box or the secret envelopes, you should stop watching now. You've seen everything else that there is to see. However, if you do want to see what's inside those little secret envelopes and inside the Series 3 mystery box, then continue onward, but you've been warned, we are now entering spoiler territory for the rest of the video. We'll start with the secret envelopes, then move to the mystery box. And as always, please pardon the glare, but here are the secret envelopes and the little instruction slips for each of the feature film and vignette final girls as we are about to see their secret items. First off, we have Gabrielle's Crystal Ball of Blood, Janelle's Slingshot, Octavia's Spellbook, Mandy's Chainsaw, and Cassie's Axe. For the record, this may be the coolest of the special items for any of the characters, if only because of how it's designed to sort of mirror Evil Dead. Notice, range 0, so your space, 3 extra damage, only takes 1 hand. But the chainsaw may not be used to modify reaction cards. That kind of stinks. You may not use this weapon until you lose 2 health to cut off your hand and attach the chainsaw to your arm. Who's laughing now? We then have Megan's pipe bombs, Rhonda's pickaxe, hard to see with the glare there, there's her pickaxe there. Then we have Kinsey's Haladie, Haladie, not familiar with that term. And then we have Christie's discipline, and apparently a discipline is one of those multi-ended whips. I'm sure there's a name for it, I don't know it. Maybe it's called a discipline. And then for Cat and Tally, we have Cat's boomsticks, which sort of simulates the idea of her having 2 of them rather than just 1, which is pretty cool. And then we have Tally's grenades with a couple uses on them. Now we'll be dividing up these characters here to look at their secret items kind of in the same order that we did a little bit ago, but just so you can see the little instruction slips with each one before we look at the items themselves, yes, they all have those same type of instruction sheets as well. Returning here to Terror from Above and Terror from the Grave for Melanie and Patsy, respectively, their new secret envelopes in Series 3 give them Melanie's trench coat and Patsy's sawed-off shotgun. As we continue looking at secret envelopes that sort of are retroactive to previous series, in this case, sort of, because Agnes and Layla are included in the guest stars box for those who didn't get them in the box of props, let's look at the 4 from the box of props. So, in the case of Julia, she gets Julia's ancient dagger. Very fitting for the Dark Quarter, and likewise for Constance, Constance's voodoo doll. And then Layla, as we saw on her mini, she has that sickle. So we have Layla's sickle. And you see the big old gun that Agnes was holding in her miniature. There's Agnes's magnum. Once again, Constance and Julia are from the Dark Quarter, and I think that Julia's ancient dagger and Constance's voodoo doll are meant to kind of replicate the following 2 item cards from the Dark Quarter. I don't think there are major spoilers, but one of them is a story card, so just be aware of that. I think these are the equivalent item cards. That said, I haven't played through the Dark Quarter yet because as of the time that I'm recording this, the app for this entirely app-driven game isn't out yet. Jumping to our final girls who have promos outside of the regular cycles of the series, we have Paula and Jamie. Remember, original version, or at least promo version, and Series 3 guest stars box version. They got themselves their little secret envelopes as well with their minis. And as we see in the minis, for Paula, she gets Paula's spiked dice. And for Jamie, she gets Jamie's hockey stick. Carolyn, as we saw from Carolyn's Revenge, also has her own secret item. That is Mr. Floppy Attuned. Briefly going back to Grandma here from Grandma's Grudge, she of course has her own secret envelope as well, and she gets Grandma's handbag. Now finally, let's look at the mystery box. Now the mystery box is a little bit different this time than in the previous 2 series. We had Series 1 and Series 2 with these much smaller mystery boxes. We will be spoiling the content of these also as we look at this because there is sort of a cross-connection, cross-compatibility for them. So this mystery box looks like a crate. Keep out with the symbol there on one side. Safety first, days since last incident, crossed out with a 0. Keep out again, VRG, FG03, MB, not responsible for contents within. Okay, and then the bottom just has your UPC and kind of the standard stuff there as we have seen. What's in here is Death. Well, Death sort of statue kind of thing here. It is functional, however. So you have Death there with his hands. I will say many have noted that the hands look like they're backwards. If those are the thumbs, you know, when you put your hands like this, your thumbs point outward, not inward, which just makes it all the more creepy. And there's spaces here, as you'll note, to fit dice. And there's enough spaces to actually fit all the dice from Series 1, 2, and 3 mystery boxes. If you're not familiar with the dice, again, you have one that's going to have your locations on it. There are 5 locations per series, so there's also a question mark for essentially a roll again. And then you have your 6 including the vignette, killers on a die, and you just roll them to randomly determine what combination you're going to play for that particular series. Well, this adds a bit more to it. So let's get out our Series 2 mystery box, which you may recall had that coin to flip to determine which series we're using. Open this up here. Keep forgetting how it opens. Get out our bone dice from Series 2. Place them in here too. And then same thing with our Necronomicon thing here for Series 1. We'll place those in there as well. So what you would do, essentially, is you would hold it steady and then spin it, right? You spin it. Oh, they go flying. Well, you're supposed to spin it. But when you spin it, whichever direction he winds up facing, you grab one of those dice. So maybe you're spinning for killer. Okay, spin it. Now I'm going to take the killer one from that side. And then do it again. Now I'm going to take the location one from whichever it points to help you randomize between series. And the idea is that when you are done, this is probably why the thumbs are like that, you would place the dice in the hands, so the next time you do it, you would not reuse those same dice to eliminate the location or killers from a particular series from the next randomized selection. This is all explained on a little rule sheet that comes with it that also has a key to the killers and locations. And if you want to use this as a display instead of functionally with the dice, and you don't want to have the dice on display, there's a reason, mentioned before, why those Terror from Destiny minis have a square bottom. They fit in the slots as well. They're teeny tiny relative to death here, but you can actually put them on there as well as a display piece. If, by chance, you don't want to keep your dice with the mystery box itself, I mentioned before that little empty space there in the guest stars miniatures box, that is where you can put your 2 Series 3 dice. And I guess I should note that technically you don't have to put the dice in there. You could use it for other stuff, like maybe the miniatures for Julia and Constance if you got the Dark Quarter, but I found that it just makes sense to put these in there so you're not constantly grabbing out the statue all the time. And there you have it, folks, with the exception of the oddball items we looked at in our previous episode of the content overviews for Final Girl, or the alternate killer miniatures for Series 2 that we will see in the near future. That is a look at all of the content for the Series 3 Kickstarter of Final Girl. I will, of course, continue with these updates. However, bear in mind that they are changing their release model so that as we go along, we will see films released sporadically and then sort of a culmination in a Kickstarter that brings it all together, which means shorter videos more often as we look at different products as they're released. Thanks for watching this huge episode all about Series 3.